of lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by a good friend of ours, Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's all taking a look at for this week with some teams starting up conference play, other of these teams playing their last game in non-conference play. He's out there in the great state of Virginia, so we're going to be asking a little bit about some of those Virginia teams. Going to be looking at the Atlantic 10, the William & Mary versus Towson game that we've got for today as well, and just some of the teams that are catching his eye with regards to team totals that he's going to be taking a look at as well in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by Better. That is BETR on Better. It's making it all the better. To be able to take a look at some daily fantasy, all you need to do is go to BETR.app and type in the promo code of VSiNPod as well, VSINPOD. That gets you started with $10 free. Then from there, you take a look at a player's stat line, determine whether or not they're going to go over and under it. You're able to do all that. And then if you have a jurisdiction that allows it, dive in on some money lines and spreads as well. And you're all good to go, and we're all good to go to take a look back at what was finally a substantial card in college basketball for the first time in the last few days. We're going to dive in and take a look at some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Kansas State gets quite a scare from Louisiana Monroe. They do avoid the upset, but 94-85, very easy cover for Louisiana Monroe's Kansas State, who's been one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. Just 10 of 35 from the outside. PJ Haggerty does go 10 of 11 at the free throw line, 24 points, so he saves the bacon for Kansas State. But how about 25 points out of Christian Lewis? He was able to lead a Louisiana Monroe team that went 7 of 18 from three-point range. MJ Russell was able to supply 17 points. Kansas State does win the rebound battle by a count of 43-30, so that helped them out quite a bit. But laying north of 30 points and being as close as they were, that's not necessarily a great look. This was a solid look for Texas Tech, though. They got up 59-21 at the half against Winthrop. Winthrop actually won the second half, but nowhere close to covering for Winthrop. 87-57 the final as Winthrop. They shoot 32% from the floor, 4 of 25 from 3. JT Toppin continues to do JT Toppin things. Double-double here, 14 points, 11 rebounds for a Texas Tech team that won the rebound battle 38-34. And for Texas Tech, you had a big performance out of Christian Anderson, 4 of 9 from 3, 29 points. Donovan Atwell, also 4 of 9 from 3-point range, but a little bit wobbly for the Texas Tech defense. Certainly looked very good on Sunday. The other ranked team that was in action, that would be Gonzaga, all over Pepperdine, 96-56. Final this one for Gonzaga, 10 of 22 from 3. Pepperdine just 5 of 19 from 3. Pepperdine loses a rebound battle 44-31. They lose a turnover battle 14-9. And for Gonzaga, it was just a balanced effort. You had 5 different guys scoring double figures. Your leader, Tyne Grant Foster, off the bench, was able to supply 18 points, 6 of 7 from the floor. Graham Ike, double-double, 13 points, 10 rebounds. Just a really good effort there. So Gonzaga, they keep rolling, and they were laying a big number. They covered that with ease. A team that was laying a big number that not just didn't cover it, but they lost outright. How about Colorado? Northern Colorado on the road, 86-81 winners as Northern Colorado, 11 of 21 from 3. Quinn Denker, 3 of 5 from the outside, 33 points on 12 of 18 shooting. He throws in there 8 boards, 8 assists. Did have 5 turnovers, and Colorado did win the turnover battle 13-5, but Colorado also just 7 of 23 from 3 and 30 out of 76 from the floor. Northern Colorado hits their free throws, going 13 out of 17 at the free throw line as well. Northern Colorado won the rebound battle 39-37, so a very nice performance out of them. Georgia Tech seemed to be finding their offense a little bit more. 3 straight overs for them, and they get the win and cover over Florida A&M. This by kind of 89-65. You had Bate and Ndongo, who was dealing with an injury, return for 15 points, 11 boards, and 5 assists. Every single Georgia Tech starter was able to score at least 10 points, nobody more than 15, so good balance scoring there as they went 6 of 11 from 3. Kawasi Reeves, he was able to give the team 11 points himself, and for Georgia Tech. Sloppy with the ball. They lose the turnover battle 20-11, but they also won the rebound battle 46-29. So a little bit of a rough one for Florida A&M. They shot less than 40% from the floor out there. A team that was able to have themselves a nice shooting day, that'd be Columbia, 90-82. They do not cover, but they get the win over North Florida as they shot 58% from the floor, 9-20 from three-point range. For North Florida, this has been a team that's been very rough on the glass. Not as bad in this game. They still lose their battle 35-26, but Cameron Oriole be able to slide 24 points. And for Columbia, Kenny Nolan, he has been very good for this team, 27 points, 4 boards. So Columbia, no cover, but they do get the win out there. In one of the later games of the day, Maryland all over Old Dominion, 73-58, and frankly, it was not this close. Maryland got up 13-0 to begin the game. 45-18, they led at the half. Old Dominion, a spirited effort in the second half, but not enough to be able to cover. As for Maryland, 18 points out of Darius Adams was able to lead the way. Maryland goes 11-29 from 3, and for Old Dominion, they actually win the rebound battle 41-36, but lose the turnover battle 13-8 for Old Dominion, just 4 of 18 from 3-point. So Maryland starting to hone in with regards to that defense. Oregon, they're starting to hone in as well. They've been one of your worst against the spread teams in all of college basketball, but they do get a cover here against Omaha, 80-57. The final, as you had 26 points out of Nate Biddle. He goes 3 of 5 from 3-point range. For Oregon, the turnover issues have been very prevalent this year. Not in this game, though. Just 8 turnovers. They go 12-30 from 3 in Omaha, 8-26 from the outside. Tony Osborne was able to supply 18 points, but nobody else on the team had double figures, and Oregon is able to win that rebound battle 47-33, so that's a step in the right direction for them. No cover for St. Mary's as a 9.5-point favorite, but they do find a way to persevere against Loyola Marymount, 78-73, the final. A Marymount team that is a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and had some good shooting in this one. For St. Mary's, 7-14 from 3-point range, with Dylan Shaw leading the way with 18 points, 4 of 7 from the outside. Loyola Marymount, 8 of 19 from 3-point range. Rodney Hot Rod Brown, he goes 4 of 8 from 3, 22 big points out of him. For St. Mary's, they win the rebound battle 30-27, and both teams did a nice job taking care of the ball. 6 turnovers apiece, so got the over there. And for St. Mary's, the win but no cover. For Harvard, they have been a team that has been playing at quite a slow tempo thus far this season, but they find a way to be able to score 78 on Colgate, 78-69. They get a nice road win as they go 13 out of 24 from 3-point range, and they did a pretty solid job on the turnover front as well, winning that turnover battle 12-10 for Harvard. 22 big points out of Thomas Beatties the third, and he was able to go 3 of 6 from 3, very fitting there. Tay Barber, 4 of 6 from the outside. Colgate, just 4 of 18 from 3-point range themselves, and neither team got to the free throw line. Harvard, 5 of 6 at the charity stripe, 8 of 10 for Colgate. You were able to get a few more free throws in this game, as for Boston College, they get the win but no cover against Lemoyne, 72-64 the final. As for Boston College, they go 15-23 at the free throw line and won the turnover battle by a count of 15-11 to be able to avoid the outright upset. But as double figure favorites, man, most of their scoring come from 2 guys, Donald Hand and Fred Payne. They combined for 48 points. The rest of the team had to combine 24, so they had to put the team on their back, and they went a combined 8 of 16 from 3-point range. And for Lemoyne, they hold in there by winning the rebound battle 43-41. Credit to Shiloh Jackson down low, 19 points, 15 rebounds, as Lemoyne has covered against quite a few power conference teams thus far this season. For Liberty, they needed overtime to get by Florida National, but they do find a way to persevere. No cover here, but 97-94 the final. Liberty, a bottom 5 team of the country in terms of total possessions per game entering into this one. They go 15 of 40 from 3-point range to find a way. Shot 51% from the floor for Florida National. They went 6 of 17 from 3-point range. And for Liberty, how about Brent Decker, who's continuing to shoot over 50% from 3? He actually dropped his percentage by going 5 of 11 in this game, but he supplied the team with 27 points. But for Florida National, they hung in this game thanks to winning the rebound battle 45-31. That offset the fact that they lost the turnover battle by a count of 14-10, and you saw this game be very interesting with the way that you had not a lot of scoring. Louisiana, they find a way to get the job done against Norfolk State, 63-54 the final, and Norfolk State actually goes 9-23 from 3. Louisiana, 10-27 from the outside. Both of these teams actually were able to combine to shoot better from 3-point range and 2-point range, and for Louisiana, they played even up on the glass. Only 7 turnovers from Louisiana, just a very slow tempo game in general. And for Louisiana, still deal with an injury to the Oklahoma State transfer in Jamarian Keller, but they do find a way in this one to be able to persevere and get the job done. And San Francisco is a very slim underdog. They find a way to be able to hand Seattle their first WCC loss, 67-59 the final for Seattle. Just cold shooting in this one. They shoot 27% from the floor for Seattle. They grab 15 offensive rebounds to San Francisco's 8. They won the turnover battle 10-5, but they just couldn't knock down their shots. Meanwhile, for San Francisco, you had Vukasin Masic step up in a big way, 15 points, 3 of 4 from 3. San Francisco as a whole, 8 of 26 from 3-point range, so not necessarily super duper hot shooting there, but Guillermo Diaz-Graham steps up for 9 rebounds. So on a night where Seattle just was not able to knock it down, the Dons do find a way to be able to get the job done, and they're able to persevere, and this team was able to persevere as well. SMU all over Cal State Fullerton, who's been a little bit more respectable this year, not in this game though. 110-63 the final. As for SMU, they went 14 out of 31 from 3. Cal State Fullerton, who's been doing a much better job taking care of the ball, they lose the turnover battle 19-11, and for B.J. Edwards, he led the way for SMU. How about a triple-double, 21 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists, and for this team as well, you were able to have Corey Washington step up in a big way, 15 points, only 14 points out of Kevin Miller, but was able to distribute 12 assists to just 1 turnover, so good, clean offense out there, and then this was some good, clean offense from Charleston Southern. We'll talk on the flip side with Mid-Major Matt a little bit more about this game. Richmond loses to Charleston Southern, 77-72, and for Richmond, they do go 25-29 at the free throw line. AJ Lopez, 14 of 14 at the free throw line, 22 big points, but for Charleston Southern, they do a nice job winning the rebound battle, 47-39. They lost a turnover battle, 13-9, and for Charleston Southern, they only go 10 of 37 from 3-point range, but they find a way to be able to pile drive the ball inside, and they had themselves 2 very good performers off the bench. Alan Sumler, 15 points, Bryson Blaine, 23 points. So Charleston Southern, as a pretty sizable double-figure underdog, they find a way to persevere, get that win. This was a total that was above 150, and it came nowhere close to it. Washington State, they take down Portland on the road, 67-62 the final. As for Portland, they just couldn't knock it down. 14 of 24 at the free throw line, 20 of 65 overall from the floor, and they lost a rebound battle. Portland did 44-42, but they did win the turnover battle, 13-6. The problem was for Washington State, they had off the bench Rahard Varvers be able to supply the team with 13 points, goes 3 of 5 from 3-point range. So Portland on a cold shooting day, they're unable to get the job done. George Mason, they find a way to get the outright win, but as 14-plus point favorites, nowhere close to covering against Penn, 83-79 the final. George Mason, who's been one of your better 3-point shooting teams at the mid-major ranks, 1 of 15 from 3 and 14 of 28 at the free throw line. Penn, 11 of 26 from 3, but still not able to get the win because for George Mason, they won the rebound battle 41-29 and a combined 21 rebounds off the bench of Nick Ellington along with Emmanuel Kenga. That helped the team be able to find a way on a cold shooting day, as you did have for Penn 23 points out of Michael Zanoni, so he was able to do a nice job in terms of being able to generate that offense. And for San Diego, they generated enough offense to be able to persevere against Pacific, 66-54 the final. As for San Diego, they go 12 of 30 from 3-point range, 22 big points out of Tyler Johnson, and for San Diego, they've had a rough time on the glass. They lose the rebound battle 39-27, but Pacific just 4 of 22 from 3-point range. And then to wrap it up, the team that really had a rough day, that would be Oregon State. They were down 53-20 at home at the half. Didn't get any better in the second half. Santa Clara, after a rough loss against Loyola Chicago before Christmas, well, it felt like Christmas for them on this day. 102-64 the final. For Oregon State, they lose this game despite going 11-26 from 3-point range. Problem was Santa Clara, 64% from the floor, 15 out of 27 from 3-point range. Elijah Mai, 23 points, 5 of 7 from 3-point range. Jake Amsinger, Brenton Napper, 13 points apiece for Santa Clara. They win the rebound battle 33-22. They win the turnover battle 16-9. So just good, clean domination out there. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, it's been very even Steven with regards to the totals. How about 1,015 unders, so 1,014 overs? You've had quite a few pushes along the way as well. If math serves me correct, I believe we've had something like 22 or 23. And favorites against the spread hitting at nearly 50.5%, 1,017, 1,035. And if you take a look at what we all got on Sunday, the favorites went 7-8-1 against the spread in the early going, with the overs hitting at a little bit over 50%. We had one more over than unders in those games. So that's where we're seeing trend-wise in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Sunday. And coming next, how about if we do chat with our good friend Matt Joseph, aka Mid-Major Matt, right here on Cuss Cuss Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast, and it's always great to be joined by this man as we've got Matt Josephs aboard. He does some great work over at ESPN Radio in Richmond. He does a great job with the Prop Queen website and the Prop Queen podcast as well. He's a man that does a tremendous job in terms of baseball, college football, college basketball, list goes on, and that's why he's known better as Mid-Major Matt, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Easy Enough Mid-Major Matt all together, and it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you as always for having me.
Matt, it has been a very interesting first 2 months of the season, and how are you going to be gauging things here in the next week or two? Because now we're coming to the end of these bye games. We've got like one left for some of these teams, and then other of these teams, they're going to be getting started with conference play here in the next few days.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, especially the teams that have the longer breaks, potentially fading them in the first half. We still have no students on a lot of campuses now, so you're still getting the lesser home court advantages for some teams, and I think Vegas is still pricing some of these home court advantages like their full arenas. So I think you still have to somewhat, handicap these things like the non-conference games. Those first conference games, for some, it's a wild step up in competition, and you have to kind of judge it off of the non-conference schedule. And for others, they've been playing tough games, and they're going to continue to play tough games. So I think it's somewhat of an, individual basis here. But once again, as I said, the home court advantages aren't there as much. And of course, the long breaks, you might get some slow starts as well.
Yep, I do think that that's so true. And do you look a little bit more at unders here in the next week or two and then maybe adjust the totals a little bit more as you see a little bit more from these teams?
Yeah, I think sometimes you get some of these squads that really get going off of the energy of the crowd. And so if there is no energy of the crowd, you do see some unders here. And yeah, as you said, look, I just watched, Richmond and Charleston Southern. Richmond was coming off of a week break, and they had a really slow start and eventually lost the game to Charleston Southern. So I think some teams take that break and then, it takes them some time to get their legs under them and get their offense going and their defense going a little bit.
Absolutely. As Matt Josephs, a.k.a. Mid-Major Matt, he is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And you mentioned it with Richmond. Going into that game on Sunday, things were looking very good for them. They were one of the more pleasant surprises out there at the mid-major level. They lose that game to Charleston Southern. And how do you take a look at they and the Atlantic 10 in general? As I feel like a lot of the teams that we were expecting to be great in the Atlantic 10, they've been sort of, shall we say, up and down. Like Dayton and VCU, I wouldn't call them disappointments, but they certainly haven't exceeded expectations or anything like that. St. Louis has been very rock solid, and I actually like what I'm seeing out of Fordham right now. But to your point, it feels like there's a big giant middle in the Atlantic 10, and I think that the Atlantic 10 might be doomed once again for only one or two bids in the NCAA tournament, where I think that there's just going to be a lot of teams that just beat up on each other in the middle.
They missed some opportunities at quad one victories. I mean, that's all there is to it. They had some opportunities. VCU had a couple of opportunities, especially getting New Mexico at home. St. Louis, who has the highest net in the conference, had 0 quad one opportunities. George Mason only had 1. GW only had 2. So, the only 2 quad one victories they have right now are Rhode Island's win over Yale and Richmond's win over Belmont. Now, the Belmont win, I think, could stay a quad one, but I don't know if Yale's going to be up there. So you might at some point see this conference with only 1 quad one victory. So, yeah, I think that means that they're going going to have potentially one team make the NCAA tournament. Now, look, if St. Louis wants to keep going and keep playing well, and then maybe VCU upsets them, or maybe Dayton upsets them, okay, then maybe you get two. But as of now, you're right. This is a conference that unfortunately will have one. Now, granted, look, that one might be capable of a win or two in the NCAA tournament, but they right now are looking at a one.
Yep, and it's going to be really interesting to see what we get out of these teams moving forward, and it is going to be a lot of fun to see what we get across the Atlantic 10 as most of these teams are wrapping up non-conference play, and then they're going to get started with regards to conference play here in the next few days as Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we're going to be seeing a lot of conference play starting up here in the next few days. We saw with the WCC a lot on Sunday. We're going to be getting some Horizon League action, what have you, and I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get out of these mid-major games the next few days, especially a game which this might not quite be in your neck of the woods, but out there in the Coastal Conference, Towson versus William and Mary for Monday is one that really captures my attention, where you've got two teams coming off a break that play completely different styles.
Yeah, and usually I like to go with the home team in that situation because I feel like they can install the pace a little bit better. But as you said, Towson's been a team that's kind of given William and Mary some trouble because William and Mary wants to go, and Towson wants to go slow, and they want to kill you on the boards. And this is no different once again for Towson. Like, they have been on the boards over and over and over again. And if you look at their meetings last year, when you look at this William and Mary and Towson meeting last year, they played only once, and William and Mary lost 88-73 at Towson. And so that's one of those classic cases where, as I pull up the box score from last year, Towson just had a lot more rebounds, 44-23. And so, yes, it's in Williamsburg. This is one of those cases, though, where I'm going to downgrade William and Mary a little bit because I think Williamsburg people will be there. I don't think the students will be there. So slight lean to Towson here, as they've been able to usually instill their pace and everything against the Tribe, plus 5 o'clock game in the afternoon, a little bit of an odd time. So Towson is an interesting underdog in that game.
Yep, and with this Towson Tigers team, we know that they're able to slow a game down. It's just hard to get them out of that style. They do a nice job in terms of being able to guard the three-point line, but William and Mary has actually been fifth in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage as well. And would that perhaps be a game where you look a little bit more at the under at a 153.5, because you know that Towson is going to be able to get that style in? I think under the radar, everyone thinks of William and Mary as a team that loves to bomb it from three, but I feel like their defense is much better than it was a season ago as well.
Yeah, their defense is definitely better. Now, their defense was pretty bad last year, so it's not like you couldn't improve on something like that. But you're right. And once again, without the crowd and without the energy, potentially, you may have a little bit of a slower start. And as you said, it's been a while since both teams played a little bit. You could see that the last William and Mary game, William and Mary's played twice, 3 times so far this month. They played the 2nd, the 6th, and the 18th, and then this is their 4th game of the month. Like, that is quite a bit of a break here for William and Mary. Now, they're used to it. They've had some sort of break in their past. They're one of the teams that takes the extra time off. Towson will have last played last Monday, so they're going to be a little bit more in rhythm here as well. And plus, Towson's played at Houston, they played at JMU, they played at Kansas, so this will not be an intimidating atmosphere for them this season.
Absolutely, and I think that is going to be a fun one to take a look at on Monday. And I know that you've got a few teams out there in your neck of the woods in the Coastal Conference, and how do you take a look at that conference as well? Because Towson is a team that coming into the season I thought was a favorite along with UNC Wilmington. Charleston is a big giant disappointment. We're going to be seeing them in action as well. And then a team that's out there in your neck of the woods, William and Mary, does seem to be that surprise team that they have the chance to be able to make that statement on Monday.
Yeah, William and Mary's the team that is going to be the wild card. If you get hot from 3, you can win any conference tournament. We've seen that before. We've seen teams win 4 games in 4 days because they were hot from 3 or they were a hot shooting team. The problem is for William and Mary, once they start getting further and further into the tournament, then they get the articles starting to get written. Well, could this be the year? Could they get into the tournament finally? I feel like that's a team that has to deal with the constant pressure of trying to get in there for the first time. But yeah, UNC Wilmington, Trask has always been a very tough place to play. Granted, they've already lost there once so far this season. Hofstra has some impressive wins. They've only played 3 home games so far this season, so I think they could be even a little bit better. Elon's got a very good offense. I saw that Elon offense against Richmond earlier this season. So, like, once again, a conference that's going to get one team in, but I think there's going to be a lot of matchups and fun opportunities for towards the top. You know, the Wilmingtons, the William Marys, the Hofstras, and the Elons.
Yep, I think that it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you mentioned Elon as well. That's another team that we're going to be seeing on Monday, and I made some nice coin betting on Elon. They're a 5.5 point favorite against Northeastern. I'm going to be willing to lay that one as well, so very much a lot of fun there as Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Matt, I know that this year you've been easing yourself a little bit more into betting on a lot of these games where you've been going a little bit more conference specific, looking a little bit more of your neck of the woods. I know that you do quite a bit with your the ACC, Atlantic 10, maybe a little bit of Coastal Conference and Sun Belt with having James Madison in your backyard. And have you been beginning to expand a little bit more? Or are you going to be sticking a little bit more to those specific conferences now that we are getting into conference play?
Yeah, I think I'm going to use the early part of conference play to kind of watch a little bit more. I've been doing a lot more with the bowls and with college football and everything, and certainly watching the college basketball. I'm not getting away from that, but I'm just saying I've been diving so much more into the college football side of things that I'm noticing some things. I'm taking some notes and things like that when it comes to some of the conferences. You mentioned the Sun Belt. The ACC has been a lot of fun, and I want to see, look, we're starting the ACC with Tech and UVA. Like, that is a really good start for both teams who have both very good records so far this season. UVA's won 6 in a row. Tech has won 5 in a row. So, like, that is a place that I'm going to certainly use to learn a lot about both teams because, let's be honest, I mean, Virginia won at Texas. That was a great win. They beat Dayton on a neutral court. The Maryland win is a good win, but there's a lot of other teams on their schedule that I don't think will help very much. And then you could say the same thing for Tech, who played Providence on a neutral court, who played, and lost to St. Mary's and VCU on a neutral court. They went to South Carolina and won. So I'm really starting to kind of hone in on who I think is going to be those teams that I really, because I'm the type of guy who likes to find a team and bet them over and over again in certain situations. We've talked about it. I love betting Toledo games. I think Toledo's team total over has given Christmas presents to all sorts of people the past couple of years. So I'm trying to find that team that I can ride out trend-wise the rest of the season.
And I don't know if you have found that team or not, but are there a few teams that you're honing in on that have been teams that you've been noticing a little bit of a trend? Because I know that last year you were mentioning that Bellarmine was just absolutely ridiculously bad on defense, and let's call it what it is. Bellarmine has been really bad on defense once again. If you've been taking overs in their games, you certainly have not lost money. I don't know how much money you've made, but you have not lost money, that's for sure. Are there a few teams in general that are starting to catch your eye right now with that regard?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Miami, Ohio, what they've been doing, they're going to lose eventually. Yeah, undefeated. They're going to lose eventually, but like they've been playing some great basketball. I think that they're going to start getting teams that know them now in the conference. I know they won their first MAC game, but the non-conference games, you may not necessarily get up for them. Plus, they didn't really play anybody in the non-conference. So I'll be interested when Bowling Green, who's having a good season, they travel to Bowling Green coming up. And that'll be a very interesting game. They still have to play, the Toledo game on the road, January 9th. I think it's great when you play these teams that haven't seen you before because you can play and you can beat them. But now you're going to enter conference play, and these are the same schools that you've seen over and over again, the same coaches that are preparing over and over again for you. So I'm really interested to see how far Miami, Ohio could take this. I don't know if they go past December 30th. I think Bowling Green gets them in Bowling Green.
Yep, that is going to be a fun one to be taking a look at on Tuesday as well. And is there anything that you're taking a look at moving forward, whether that be on Monday? I know that you just mentioned that Bowling Green game. That's going to be a game that's probably going to be on your radar as well. But is there anything else that you're really taking a look at here in the next few days? Because I feel like for Monday, we've got a mismatch of different things, some conference games out there in the CAA and the Horizon League. You've got these final non-conference games with Purdue taking on Kent State. Anything that's just really catching your eye?
It's one of those things where, Michigan State and Cornell, I mean, that one could see a lot of points. I know the total's going to be pretty high for that one. You've got Michigan State, who has been able to score a lot of points on some of their lesser opponents. They just put up 92 on Toledo. It could be one of those things where if there is a slow start because they've been off for 9 days, maybe you in-game bet and over there because it's going to come. You look at, what Cornell has done. They gave up 99 at George Mason, 93 at Towson, 93 at Sanford. So, if we do get, that first TV time out where it's 7-2, 9-3, maybe there's a better number when it comes to that total. And I think that's something that's very important when it comes to betting college basketball. If you go into a game with a certain mindset and that mindset doesn't occur early on, I think you have to be able to adjust and be able to make adjustments as you see fit. I really feel like especially these games coming off of long breaks, you're going to have to find these opportunities where some overs may not be until in-game overs. I think you just have to, be ready to adjust. You got Alabama. That's a high total. They're playing Yale. If they start slow, maybe you in-game bet it. Arkansas, JMU. Like these blowouts that are going to happen here on Monday, they may have some opportunities for in-game overs if you wait a little bit and make sure that, there's a little bit of a slow start.
Yes, I do think that it's going to be really fun to take a look at, and I'm right there with you on some of these teams that get off to a little bit of a slow start. We're seeing a lot of these power conference teams coming off a break being a little bit sleepy, both with regards to their overall scoring and the defense as well. Like a prime example was the lone game that we saw on Saturday where CSUN was able to go out. They won that first half, didn't win the game, but they covered the spread very easily. They were never outside the spread for the entirety of it, so good points there. And Matt, I know you're doing a great job on a wide variety of different fronts, taking a look at bowl season, taking a look at college basketball, and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I'm Major Matt on Twitter. Post all my plays on the Action Network, so therefore you can track them all. We've been doing really well in the bowl season so far. Certainly when we start diving even more into college basketball, they'll be up there on there. And I'm always willing to answer questions because, as a guy who likes watching the mid-majors and stuff like that, there may be some games that you are interested in that maybe you don't know enough about some of these teams, and maybe Greg can't answer the question. I'm always here to help because we all want to beat the books. As we get closer to March, everybody's going to start focusing in more on college basketball, especially when college football ends. Everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, there's another sport. It's college basketball.
Absolutely. And we've got ourselves some great action that's going to be happening here in the next few weeks. I know that Matt, he is honing in on it. He's doing a tremendous job on so many different fronts, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. So big thanks to Matt for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And it's always great to be able to get Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major, Matt aboard every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Matt for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with two bigger conferences at the top, and then any teams from these conferences have their games listed at the bottom. The MEAC, the SWAC, the America East, the Atlantic Sun, the Northeast Conference, the Southland, the Patriot League. I believe that I have got them all. I might have forgotten one of them, the Big South, if I didn't say the Big South already, but let's dive in. 801, 802 on the card. It is Missouri State. They are on the road facing off against Delaware, and Delaware does find themselves as a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. 133.5 to 134.5 is the total, and I said a total of a 139. I do like the over. Now, you've got two teams that are really not looking to push tempo whatsoever. You've got a Delaware team that has slowed it down this year, currently in terms of total possessions per game, 298th. Missouri State, they're really playing at a very similar tempo themselves. Right now, they're clocking in about 285th, but you do have a Delaware team that has not been very great defensively, and they're looking to make up for it with the fact that they shoot right around about 38.5% from three-point range. That is a top 40 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you do have a Missouri State team that has been shooting about 26.1% from three. That is 360th in all of college basketball, but yet I did set Missouri State as a 1-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to dive in on them because you've got a Delaware team that has been atrocious with regards to taking care of the ball, 295th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're 332nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in their home games with Delaware. It has been a case where this team has been a little bit banged up, and now they're getting a lot of their guys back at the fold. Jamar Brown probably still going to be out for quite a while, but still, you've had Christian Bliss be able to step up, 14 points, 6 boards, 6.5 assists. He's really been that do-it-all guy. Justin Fernandez, who missed the first 3 or so games this season, he's been their top scorer, 16 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots 46% from three. I think that there's a little bit of regression there. Tyler Alzer gives you some versatility with a 44% three-point shooting percentage, 11.5 points per game, and then McComb Emery has really been the main rebounder, 7 boards, a steal, 14 points per game for a Delaware team that they just really don't force the issue on defense either. They are well outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Missouri State has cleaned up their act. They're now a top 150 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis after that was an Achilles heel for them last year. But now you've got Michael Osi-Benosu doing a nice job, giving you 14 points, 7 boards, steal and a half per game. He missed 3 games and now he's back. Zaxton King has been down with his 3-point shooting just 21% from the outside. Do think that rebounds a little bit, 9.5 points per game. And then Keith Pallick has been that main guy with about 18 points, 3.5 assists. Only shoots 27.5% from 3. And as a matter of fact, you take a look at the roster, out of their top 6 scorers, only one guy shoots about 31% from 3. That'd be Kobe Williams, who's been able to shoot 32% from the outside. But I do think that you're going to see a little bit of positive regression here. We've got a Missouri State team that has been a top 200 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Missouri State team that is very content to drive the ball down low. They face off against a Delaware team that has been outside the top 125 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and Delaware is also a sub-top 250 team in terms of rebound percentage. So set a total of 139. I do like the over and Missouri State on the money line, as I did make them the 1-point favorite. 803, 804 on the card. Sacred Heart plays us at Merrimack, and the Merry Men of Merrimack do find themselves as a bit of an underdog here of 1.5 to 2.5 points. 141.5 is the total, and I did set my total at a 141.5. This did open up at a 139.5, so if we can get back down to a 141 or less, that is my buy point on the over. You've got a Merrimack team that, once again, is playing quite slow and controlled, 348th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Sacred Heart, they play fast, but not warp speed fast, about 128th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a good old situation if something's got to give. Sacred Heart outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Merrimack outside the top 300 with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage at 30.1%, and I do think that for Sacred Heart, they do find a way to win the battle on the glass, which is why I did set them as the 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. Merrimack's still solid with regards to generating turnovers, but I mean, every year that they've been at the Division I level, they've been a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 65 right now. Now, Merrimack is actually doing a great job taking care of the ball. Top 75 team in terms of ball security, with KVR Kennedy leading the way with 15 points. She's 37.5% from 3-point range, but no rebounding whatsoever for the team. You only have 2 guys give you more than 3.3 rebounds per game. Todd Brogna with about 4.4 boards, 5.5 points per game. Just has not been a great fit with this team. And Kennedy, like I mentioned before, he gives you about 4 rebounds per game. This is a Sacred Heart team that sometimes can get a little bit careless with the ball. And Anquan Hill, who shot over 40% from 3 last season at 6'8", he's down to 22.5% from the outside, but that should be rebounding a little bit more. You've had Makai Connor come on over from the MAC, give you 5.9 assists at 2.5 turnovers per game, only about 7.5 points per contest, but he's been able to get Niall Ralph Byer involved with him, shooting 46.5% from 3, 14 points per game. Jan Farrell has been around the block, a steal, 10 points, 4.5 rebounds, and Deshaun Gittins, who's come over from Florida International, he's Gittins at 15 points, 5 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. This is a Sacred Heart team that has been outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but with them being the far better team on the glass, and with Merrimack just not generating the same amount of turnovers that they have in the past, I do think that low post play wins out for Sacred Heart in this spot, so I did set Sacred Heart as the 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them, and at a 141 or less, like the over. 805, 806 on the card. Marist is going to be on the road against Quinnipiac, and the Bobcats do find themselves as a favorite of 3.5 to 4 points. So on this game, it is 143.5, and I said Quinnipiac is just a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Marist. Marist has just consistently one of the best defenses in all of college basketball each out of the last 2 years. A top 10 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so you know that they're going to be able to hold up there. They, on the flip side, are facing off against Quinnipiac team that has been pretty rock solid in terms of cleaning up the turnovers, and they themselves are a top 125 team now in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. With Marist, they always do a great job with that 2-point shooting percentage, but sometimes can be a little bit vulnerable with regards to rebounding, but they've been able to do an even better job this year. They're now a top 110 team with regards to rebound percentage. Quinnipiac down to about 235th. This despite the fact that you've had Amari Monroe come back from a season ago. Last year was at like 19.7 rebounds per game and has actually dialed back a little bit. 15.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists, but is a little bit more versatile than a season ago, giving the team also about 2.5 steals per game. Gene Zimmerman has actually been your top scorer. He's up to 17 points per game, but he's dealt with a little bit of injury. He's been out since the 7th of December. If he does play in this game, he's probably going to be very limited, so that got factored in. Then you've got Asim Jones, Keith, give me just one more, McKnight, who have been able to combine for about 21.5 points per game, and Jones is right now shooting 58% from three. Quinnipiac as a whole, after they were well outside the top 225 with their three-point shooting percentage a year ago, closer to about 100 at about 35.5% from the outside, and they're doing an okay job with their interior defense as well. They're a top 125 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, so I did set a total of 138. I'm going to be in on the under, but with this Marist team, been very impressed by what I've seen out of Elijah Lewis, 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, and I am for this Marist team, even though they're so strong down low, they've only got one guy that gives you over 4.7 rebounds per game, Jaden Daughtry, 5.5 points, 5.5 boards, a block, a steal and a half per game, so he's been very nice and versatile with that regard. Marist, an okay three-point shooting team. Miles Parker shoots about 42% from the outside, 6.5 points for a team that overall shoots about 34% from three, but Marist has also upped their turnovers. They're up to the top 100 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they've also been much better with regards to being able to guard the arc as well. They become a top 30 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Think they get a slog of a game in the end. I do think that Quinnipiac has just enough to get by even with the Zimmerman injury, but going to set my line at 2, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Marist, and here with this total, I'm going to be in on the under as well. 807-808 on the card. Towson is on the road against William and Mary. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both, but you get them as between a 1-point favorite to a 1-point underdog, depending upon your book. Total on this game is 153.5, and I did set a total of a 145.5. I'm going to be in on the under. So many people think of William and Mary as just a team that loves to bomb it from three, and certainly they do. They're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range, but for William and Mary, they've been really good in terms of generating turnovers. 30th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're also 296th in terms of taking care of the ball. They have turned the ball over themselves darn near 15 times per game, so that's been a little bit of an issue. And for William and Mary, they're a solid but not amazing three-point shooting team. They shoot about 33.2% from the outside. That's actually outside the top 200 nationally, but they're also number 5 in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. So they overall just win the perimeter battle, and it's been a lot of mix and match. They've dealt with some injuries with Kyle Pulliam, Reese Miller. These two guys should be back in the fold. They both have combined for about 23 points per game. They both shoot in the mid-30s from three. You've had Cade Askins really be your top three-point shooter among guys that average over 9 points per game. He gives you about 9.1 points, shoots 38% from three, and it's a lot of mix and match with regards to rebounding, and that's a big place where William and Mary is going to have a disadvantage. This team is outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They themselves are outside the top 300 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and this Towson team, top 40 team in terms of percentage of their own missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but they leave quite a bit of something to be desired from the outside. They shoot only about 29.5% from three outside the top 325 nationally. Now, they themselves are a top 40 team in terms of guarding the three-point line. They have been a top 80 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they really don't force the issue. They have been outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You got two main headline guys in Dylan Williamson along Tyler Tejada. They've been able to combine for about 33 points per game, but they combined to shoot about 29 to 30% from three-point. Jack Dombia has been able to give you 5.5 boards, a steal and a half per game, so he's been solid with his nearly 12 points per game. And then from there, it's a lot of mix and match with guys like Tyler Schmidt, Jaquan Womack, give you about 4 or 5 points per game. I do think that in the end, William and Mary, with the way that they are able to generate turnovers, despite the fact that they'll lose the battle on the glass, I do think that they control the perimeter just enough to get the job done, and this will be a major tempo battle. Towson 361st in terms of total possessions per game, William and Mary 10th, but with the way that William and Mary's games have so many dead turnovers, I did set a total of a 145.5. I like the under and made William and Mary the 3.5 point favorite, so won't take the Tribe as a slight favorite / underdog. 809-810 on the card. It is Dartmouth on the road against Florida, and Florida is a very sizable favorite here, between 34 to 34.5 points. 157.5 to 159.5 is the total. I did set a total of a 158.5. Personally, I would rather have the 157.5 over rather than the 159.5 under, mainly because I do think that Florida is doing for a little bit of positivity with their three-point shooting percentage. Right now, they're shooting 28.2% from three-point, 339th in the country, and recognize that this is not the same three-point shooting team that they were a season ago, but I do think that that should be going northward. They go up against a Dartmouth team that's well outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' two-point and three-point shooting percentage, and Dartmouth is 35th in the country, shooting 37.9% from three-point range, actually elevates up to 40.4% away from home, so I did set my line at a 28.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Dartmouth. Dartmouth has also been a relatively okay team and not allowing a lot of second and third chances. They themselves don't get a lot of offensive rebounds outside the top 225 in terms of percentage of their own missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but in road and neutral court games, 72nd with regards to that defensive rebound percentage. They've been able to get a lot of production out of Kareem Thomas, who's been supplying 20 points. He shoots 59% from three, which that'll be going nowhere, but Brandon Mitchell-Day, good versatility here. 11.5 points, 3 assists, 8.5 rebounds. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Connor Edmondson has been able to shoot about 35% from three with 8 points, 3 assists per contest as well. Dartmouth needs to take better care of the ball. They're outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis, but you've got a Florida team that has been really good on the glass, number 1 team in terms of rebound percentage. Not a team that's going to generate a lot of turnovers. Outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, this is a Florida team that does a pretty solid job in terms of being able to push tempo as well. Florida is currently, in terms of total possessions per game, hovering right around about 59th in the country. Dartmouth, a little bit more of a mid-tempo team at about 193rd, and certainly there's going to be plenty of offensive rebounds to be had for this Florida team. Thomas Saw, 17.6 boards. He's been able to lead the way. Ruben Chinyelu, 10.5 points, 10.5 boards. Alex Condon has been able to give you 9 boards, 14 points per game, but just really nobody's been able to emerge as a top 3-point shooter. Urban Klavzar at 34.9% is pretty much the only guy in the roster that shoots above 34% from 3-point range. I believe he should be getting a little bit more time than Boogie Fland, who's been giving you 11.5 points, 2.5 assists, but with Fland, he's shooting a paltry 23% from 3, and Xavier Lee, 3.5 assists, 12.5 points, 5 rebounds. He does everything except make his threes. We've been shooting about 25%. Again, I think that there's going to be a little bit of positivity with that 3-point shooting for Florida, so at a 158 or less, I'm in on the over, but we'll take those points with Dartmouth, set them as a 28.5 point dog. 8-11, 8-12 on the card. It is Youngstown St, and they're going to be playing us to Detroit. Detroit is a underdog here of 8 to 9.5 points. 143.5 to 144 is the total, and I said Youngstown St is a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Youngstown St team has been pretty sturdy in terms of their defense, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Right now, they do check in about 130th in all of college basketball, mainly because of their ability to generate turnovers. 77th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and it's a Detroit team that's leaving a lot to be desired on offense. 338th with their 3-point shooting percentage, 305th in terms of overall points scored on a per possession basis, as pretty much everything runs through Orlando Lovejoy along TJ Nadeau. Nadeau has been able to shoot 46.5% from 3. He's been able to supply 13 points per game, and he's been able to throw in there about 4 boards per contest as well. Orlando Lovejoy, 11 points, 3.5 assists, 2.5 per contest, shoots 94% at the free throw line, but he has yet to make a 3 thus far this season, so that's been a big giant issue. And outside of Nadeau, there's nobody else on the roster that shoots above 30% from 3-point range that has taken more than 1 3 this year. That's not what you like to see, especially for a Detroit team that, they're pretty solid in terms of being able to generate second and third chances. Top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You don't have that main dominant rebounder, though. Legend Geeter has been able to give you 5 rebounds per game. He right now leads the team in terms of rebounds, and for Youngstown St, this is not the same team that they were a season ago down low, as they lose that 7'3" big man in Gabe Dines, but they've been able to have quite a few guys being able to mix and match down low, as you've got Chris Carroll and Rich Roth, who have been able to combine for about 9 rebounds per game. Carroll is caroling all the way to shooting 49% from 3. He's been very good with his versatility, a little bit over a steal per game. Roth, about 10.5 points. He shoots 44.5% from 3. And Youngstown State as a whole, they're shooting 36.5% from the outside. At home, that goes up to about 38% from 3-point range, and they've guarded the arc well as well. Teams are shooting less than 31% from the outside against them. Top 100 mark in all of college basketball. They're taking it on the chin a little bit more down low, but with Youngstown State doing a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, and they themselves have had a tough time in terms of taking care of the ball. Youngstown State outside the top 275 in terms of ball security, about 14.5 turnovers per game. I do think that they do a nice job in terms of taking it to a Detroit team that just really has not been able to get a lot going on offense. Now, I think that Detroit is doing for a little bit of positivity with their offense, so I did set my total at a 144.5. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over, and you've got a Detroit team that's relatively mid-tempo, about 146th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Youngstown State more around about 233rd, but also for Detroit, well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So 144 or less in on the over, and one to lay with the Youngstown State made them the 12.5 point favorite. 8-13, 8-14 on the card. Manhattan is on the road against Rider, and Rider finds themselves as an underdog of 2.5 to 3.5 points. 147.5 is the total, and made Manhattan the 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now for Manhattan, this team has been awful with regards to their defense. Currently 333rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Rider's defense is just as bad. 316th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and with the Rider offense second worst in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 310 in terms of taking care of the ball. The one thing Rider has been okay at has been rebounding. They're about 196th in the country in terms of their overall rebound percentage. That's halfway respectable. Manhattan has been getting ballroom blitzed on the glass. Right now, Manhattan is 355th in the country in terms of their overall rebound percentage, but the problem for Rider is you have nobody that's able to make an outside shot to save their lives. Right now, you've got 2 double-figure scorers course, in Flash Burton along Zion Cruz. These two guys have combined for just under 22 points per game, and between the two of them, they're shooting about 24% from three-point range. Caleb Smith, he's right now shooting 33% from three, and he's been taking less than a three per game, 8.5 points, 6.8 rebounds per game, and then really the lone other guy on the roster that shoots above 25% from three is Antoine Wilson, who has missed a pair of games this year, averaging 4 points per contest and takes fewer than 2 threes per game. So you really don't have a lot there, and Ryder doesn't force any turnovers either. They're well outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, which means that a man-and team that has been neither here nor there in terms of taking care of the ball. Lots of clean possessions for them. Jaden Winston, Devin Dinkins, they combine for about 30 points per game. Both shoot about 37.9% from three-point range. Terrence Jones is able to shoot 40% from three, 10.5 points per game. Frazier Knight at the Roxborough, 6 rebounds, 11.5 points per game. He's seen a little bit of a dip in terms of his three-point shooting percentage, but it's been a team that's been neither here nor there in terms of generating turnovers. Where the team really gets beat is giving up the three. They've been outside the top 310 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. A little bit better on the inside, though. Their defensive rebound percentage is well outside the top 320 in all of college basketball, but with Ryder's inability to be able to win the turnover battle, with Ryder really not shooting well from three-point range, I do think that this Banana team should be able to have some success. Certainly, they've been dealing with having Will Sidner being out due to eligibility concerns, but Marko Lubicic has been able to give you 6.5 points, 4.5 boards, a little bit of versatility there, and I do believe that Ryder is just one of the worst teams in all of college basketball. Semi-total 141.5. You've got a Ryder team that also is playing at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball, currently 316th in terms of total possessions per game, so in on the under. Semi-total 141.5, and maybe and the 9.5 point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 8:15, 8:16 on the card. IU Indy is on the road against Cleveland St, and Cleveland St is a slim favorite of 2.5 to 3.5 points. 175.5 to 176.5 is the total, and made a total of 176.5. So 176 or less, I'm going to be in on the over. You've got an IU Indy team that has been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and both of these teams are taking it on the chin with regards to rebounding, but IU Indy even worse. IU Indy 359th in all of college basketball in terms of rebound percentage. Cleveland St is 325th, and for Cleveland St, this team is going to lose the turnover battle. They've had a tough time in terms of taking care of the ball, about 14.5 turnovers per game, outside the top 300 in terms of ball security, but I'm willing to lay it here with Cleveland St. I set them as a 6.5 point favorite, mainly because this Cleveland St team has been a good three-point shooting team, top 55 team in the country with Trey Beard, who missed a little bit of time due to injury. He's back. He's shooting 48.5% from three, 14 points per contest. Ice Emery shoots 42% from three with about 11.5 points per game. Again, they need to clean up those turnovers, but you've been able to have Josiah Harris, when he's actually been out there on the floor, give you about 8 rebounds per game. Probably going to be out once again. He's been out since early December, but in his absence, you've been able to get a little bit more out of Priest Ryan, who's been supplying the team with about 8 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. He's stepped up with at least 5 boards in 4 out of the last 5 games, so I like what I'm seeing there. On the other end, you've got an IU Indy team that you've got a lot of guys that have come up from the Division II ranks and are really struggling right now. Kyler D'Agostino has been the main guy with about 16 points per game. Shoots 40.5% from three, but for a team that really loves to go bombs away from three, they attempt 34 threes per game. They're only shooting about 32% as a collective. They've been well outside the top 350 with regards to that rebound percentage, and even though they do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, they are sloppy with it as well. They're outside the top 200 in terms of their own ball security, in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. IU Indy outside the top 320 in both of those categories. They gamble for turnovers, and if you don't get a turnover, if you're IU Indy, that means easy buckets for the other team. And I think that Cleveland St, even though they've had their issues in terms of taking care of the ball, being at home, coming off the break, I do think that they protect the ball just enough to be able to get the job done here on what should be a very much up and down game. IU Indy, a top 5 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cleveland St, 69th. Very nice. So did set my line at a 6.5. Willing to lay it with Cleveland St, and like the over, set my total 176.5. 8:17, 8:18 on the card. It is Hofstra, and they play us to Campbell. Campbell is a sizable underdog here of 9.5 to 10.5 points. 149.5 is the total, and I set a total of 148.5. So here at a 149 plus, I'm going to be in on the under, but I'm going to lay with Hofstra. I set Hofstra as a 14.5 point favorite. Hofstra was actually number 1 in all of college basketball last year in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're not quite number 1 this year, but they're still a top 40 team with that regard, and you've got a Campbell team that's just having a very difficult time in terms of taking care of the ball. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, Campbell is 336th, and even though this is a Campbell team that has been able to do a really good job in terms of being able to give themselves second and third chances, now they give their opponents quite a few second and third chances, but Campbell, a top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, I don't think that that's going to be enough to offset that. For Campbell, they have had DJ Turner-Up-Smith do a nice job in terms of turning it up, 18.5 points, pair of assists, shoots 37.5% from three-point range, but Campbell as a whole only shoots 31% from three. That is outside the top 275 nationally. They're also about country average in terms of generating turnovers, so they offset that a little bit, but they have to deal with Cruz Davis, who's been incredible for us. They're shooting 43.5% from three, 21 points per contest, and Campbell now 306th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, goes up to 39.2% in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage away from home. German Plankatev, he's got some versatility. He's been able to give the team about 9 points, 3.5 boards. He's shooting 42% from three as a 6'6", a little bit of a combo player, and for Hofstra, Silas Sunday, a true 7-footer. Doesn't give you a lot of scoring, but he gives you about 5 rebounds per game. Big reason why this team has been so good with their interior defense. And for Davis, he's got a little bit of help from James Boogie Patterson, who comes in from Iona, 10 points, 5.5 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from three. Preston Eadman only shoots about 33% from three, but how about 14 points, nearly 5 assists per game as well. Hofstra about a country average team in terms of taking care of the ball. They've been a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, and with the way that they're also a top 175 team in terms of guarding the three-point line, I do think that Hofstra going to take it to a Campbell team that's going to get sloppy with it, and you've got some dueling tempos here as well. Campbell's been looking to push up tempo, 110th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and you're number one under John Andrewchuk. Meanwhile, Hofstra more around about 274, so made a total of 148.5 at 149 plus in on the under, and I'm going to lay it with Hofstra, made them the 14.5 point favorite. 819, 820 on the card. UNC Wilmington is on the road against North Carolina A&T. A&T is a 9.5 to a 10.5 point home underdog. 143.5 to 144.5 is the total. I said Wilmington is a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. You've got a Wilmington team that is very content to play slow and controlled, 341st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, for North Carolina A&T, relatively mid-tempo, about 174th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for A&T, they've actually been a very solid rebounding team. They're 77th in the country with this regard. You've got a Wilmington team, though, that they are 20th in the country on the glass, and for North Carolina A&T, it just feels like they only have two main scorers that they're able to rely upon, as you've had Lewis Walker step up with about 18.5 points per game. He doesn't shoot it well from three at 27%, but gives the team 6 boards. And then Luron Walker, who has been dealing with a lot of injuries, 16.5 points per game. And with Walker, he's been out for the last few games, and we've seen as a result, this team just really have a little bit of a tougher time on offense. Trent Middleton is the only other player on the roster that gives you double figures. He's supplying 13 points, shoots in the mid-30s for 3 points for an A&T team that is outside the top 300 with their 3-point shooting percentage at 30.7%. This team very much relies upon getting to the free throw line. Top 30 team in the country in terms of percentage of their possessions that end in a free throw, but they're also hovering around 300th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Now, the good news is they get to face off against a Wilmington team that is really not going to be forcing the issue in terms of turnovers. They're outside the top 240 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Wilmington also a top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and just a very well-rounded offense that has been a top 20 team in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. So while they aren't going to wow you with their overall shooting percentage, they are going to be able to get those second and third chances to be able to get a clean bucket. Christian May has really been able to step up with 11.5 points, 5.5 boards. He shoots nearly 40% from three. Nolan Hodge, he shoots 41% from the outside, 16 points, 5 rebounds per game, while Patrick Wessler, he's a true 7-footer that comes in for Virginia Tech, 11.5 points, 8 boards, gives you just under a block per game. They should be able to dominate things down low. And then you got Gavin Walsh, who's been able to give you about 6 boards, a little bit over a steal per game. For this Wilmington team, they've been a top 100 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They do a nice job in terms of keeping their opponents out the free throw line, top 55 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, which that really takes away a lot of the offensive momentum that you get for this A&T team. And A&T, they have been having a little bit of a rough time with regards to their defense, and if you look at A&T, they've got some warped sets because they have played a lot of games against non-Division I teams, so you have to separate those out a little bit if you utilize one of those apps that they don't do so. But for A&T, they have been about 132nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while you've got a Wilmington team that's more around 65th, but I think that those second and third chances get you this over for Wilmington, set them as a 12.5 point favorite, so one to lay with Wilmington, and I'm going to be in on this total over as well. 821, 822 on the card. Charleston is going to be playing us to Drexel, and the Dragons of Drexel are a 10 to a 10.5 point underdog. Toss game between 146.5 to a 147, and I did set a total here of a 140. I do like the under. Drexel, one of the more slow and controlled teams in all of college basketball, always have been and probably always will be, 324th in terms of total possessions per game. Charleston, they've had to slow down as well because they've had so many injuries. They're about 236th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Charleston, I can only set them as a 6-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take those points. Charleston continues to be outside the top 300 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Have have to think that this goes northward sooner rather than later, but Mr. Dean, first name Mr., last name Dean, he has been dealing with an injury for 10 games this far this season. There's a chance that Kobe Duggan is going to be able to play in this game, but what are you going to be able to get out of him? He was very rock solid last year at Campbell with about 15.5 points per game, but he hasn't played all season long, and throwing him out there in a game after you've already played 13 games to start with, that's a little bit of an issue. Connor Hickman, he's been really the main scorer since he's come off of injury with 14 points per game, and Jalen Counter, he gives you 14 points, 5.5 rebounds per game for a Charleston team that has been solid on the glass. Top 175 team in terms of rebound percentage, but they do give up quite a few second and third chances, and with Charleston, not only are they not shooting well from three, they're giving up quite a few good looks from three-point range as well. They've been outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, this is not a Drexel team that's going to be absolutely exploding with their three-point shooting or anything like that. You've got a Drexel unit right now that shoots about 34.5% from three, but that said, this is a team that they do have a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball outside the top 275 in terms of ball security, but this is also a bunch that has been able to do a pretty rock-solid job down low. Top 155 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Drexel back in the top 125 with regards to their overall rebound percentage, despite only having one guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. That would be Willem Garcia Edson, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 6.5 boards, so very well-rounded there. But Victor Panoff has been able to shoot 45% for 3, 9.5 points per game. Dealt with a little bit of injury, but should be good to go in this game. Shane Blakeney and Kevon Vanderhorst, they're combining for about 24 points per game. Blakeney shoots about 34% for 3, throws in their 3 assists, steal and a half per contest. Vanderhorst also about 3 steals per game as well, and with this Drexel team doing a nice job giving themselves second and third chances. Drexel, by the way, only about 280th with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, but giving themselves those second and third chances, I do think is going to keep themselves lively in a game where Charleston, I think, is going to break a lot of threes, and I do think that with this Drexel team being a little bit better in terms of generating turnovers, they're back in the top 225 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They find a way to be able to hold in there, so I did set my line at 6. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Drexel, made my total a 140, so also like the under 823, 824 on the card. It is Penn State. They are on the road facing off against Purdue, and Purdue is a 24.5 to a 25.5 point favorite with a total of 158.5, and set a total of 155.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Now you've got a Penn State team that's been just playing at warp speed. Penn State right now, in terms of total possessions per game, they are checking in number 8 in all of college basketball. I think they get back to their roots a little bit more. Penn State, typically a little bit more of a mid-tempo team. They're playing too fast for their own good, because when Penn State has been at their best, they've been one of the better turnover teams in all of college basketball defense. Right now they're outside the top 140 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, while they themselves are having a tough time taking care of the ball. Penn State right now outside the top 280 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Good news is they go up against a Purdue team that's outside the top 275 in terms of generating turnovers on defense, and Delrecco Gillespie has been one of the top rebounders in all of college basketball. Pair of blocks, 19.5 points, 12.5 boards, shoots 36% from 3. He's been solid, and this Penn State team, after being outside the top 300 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage last season, up to 38.6% from the outside this year. Morgan Stafford, a big reason why, 15 points on 39% three-point shooting after he missed pretty much all of last season. And then you've got Quan Wolke along with Jarari Williamson, who are both shooting above 44% from the outside. I think that they're going to suffer a little bit of regression here. I recognize that this is a Purdue team that is not necessarily the most efficient defense in the world, 64th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and as I mentioned, not a team that's going to generate turnovers, but what this Purdue team does is not allow you really good looks or inside the top 100 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and they themselves shoot 40% from 3. Trey Kaufman-Renn should be able to dominate down low with a double-double, 14 points, 10 rebounds per game, and then Oscar Clough, 11.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, but don't lose sight of the 7'3"-ish big man in Daniel Jacobson, who's able to give you 4 boards, 2.5 blocks per game, so the size that Darrecco Gillespie has to face is, I think, going to be a little bit too much for him. You've got Braden Smith with all sorts of versatility, 12.5 points, 9.5 assists. He's right now shooting 42% from 3. Fletcher Lawyer off the ball shoots 42% from 3. Same goes for CJ Cox. Cox about 8 points per game. Lawyer more on about 13.5 points per contest. And while Purdue doesn't really generate a lot of turnovers on offense, they do a great job in terms of being able to protect the ball. Top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. So they do a nice job in terms of protecting that. And as we know with this Purdue team, they're going to be one of the more slow teams in all of college basketball. 324th in terms of total possessions per game, so get a little bit of a tempo war here. I do think that Penn State is going to slow down a little bit, and I do think that with what Darrecco Gillespie provides down low, it's going to be just enough for them to hold within the number. Set my line at a 23.5, so at 24 plus, won't take those points with Penn State, like the under as well. Set my total at a 155.5, 825, 826 on the card. Indiana State is going to be playing us to Belmont. Belmont is an 8.5 point road favorite. Total on scheme 150. 156.5. Set a total of 155.5. I do like the under. You've got a Belmont team that is once again looking to play relatively up-tempo right now in terms of total possessions per game, checking in about 83rd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got an Indiana State team that has dialed it back a little bit from last year, about 79th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So both of these teams are playing at relatively the same tempo, and for Indiana State, a little bit better on defense this year. 110th of the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Belmont, much better on defense. Belmont is right now 38th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And if you look at a road/Utica venue, only Hawaii is giving up fewer points on a per possession basis. So I actually do like the under here, especially with Indiana State still being very sloppy with the ball. They're turning the ball over 13.5 times per game, outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers per possession. And Indiana State last year was really good with their three-point shooting on offense, really bad at guarding the arc on defense. This year, Indiana State top 75 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, their own three-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 300th. Ian Scott has been very good from the outside, 52.5% three-point shooter with 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and then you've been able to get a little bit of three-point shooting out of Derek Voss, 44% three-point shooter with 8.5 points per game, but he's missed 4 games, and he only took about 1 3 per game, and everyone else on the roster shoots less than 33.6% from the outside, with Camp Wagner giving you about 13 points, 5 boards, 33% three-point shooter. And for Indiana State, while they've been able to do an okay job in terms of being able to limit teams with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, they give up a lot of second and third chances. Indiana State right now outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound percentage. And you've got a Belmont team that has Sam Orme along Tyler Lundblade, who are both right around 6'6" to 6'8". Orme has been very good on the glass, 7 boards, 13.5 points, shoots about 35% from 3, and Lundblade doesn't really give you a lot of rebounding or anything, but shoots 41% from the outside. Nick McLean, 6.5 assists and 2.8 turnovers per game. He's been able to run things pretty efficiently for Belmont, 11.5 points, and he shoots 47% from 3. And Belmont right now a top 15 team with their 39.8% three-point shooting. I do think that Indiana State going to do an okay job of being able to guard there, but I am for Indiana State. They allow opponents to shoot 29.5% from 3. Belmont, the exact same percentage, and Belmont has become a top 200 team in terms of generating turnovers. I do think that Indiana State just going to be too sloppy with the ball to be able to cover this number. Semi-line at 9.5, so willing to lay up to 9 with Belmont. I also like the under. I semi-total at a 155.5. 827, 828 on the card. You've got Cornell. They are on the road facing off against Michigan State. Michigan State, very sizable favorites here. You're going to be laying 27.5 points with them. 158.5 to 159.5 is the total. And with Michigan State, I did set them as a favorite of 22 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Cornell. Cornell has just been a really good offensive team this year. They are 4th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home. And Cornell, as we know, this team likes to move it. 28th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Michigan State looking to slow things down to 97th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And this is just going to be a war of strength on strength. Michigan State, 25th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 24th in opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, 60th in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Cornell, they are 4th in the nation with their 3-point shooting percentage. They shoot 41.4% away from them. And then they're 17th in terms of 2-point shooting percentage away from home as well. So you've got two teams that are very efficient on opposite sides of the ball. Cornell outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Michigan State more on 71st in terms of points per possession on offense. So their 3-point shooting starting to get in line. Jackson Kaler is actually shooting 46% for 3 with about 14 points, 10.3 rebounds per game. Michigan State, a top 10 team in the country with regards to our overall rebound percentage, with Carson Cooper giving you 7 boards, 10.5 points per game, and then Jeremy Fears, a top 5 player in terms of assists per game in all of college basketball, 9.2 assists and 2.3 turnovers per game, 11 points per game. Michigan State really not going to force a lot of turnovers. They are outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Kurtang give you about 7 points, shooting now 40% from 3-point. He's been able to give the team a nice boost. And for this Cornell team, typically it's a little bit more whole square than the sum of its parts, but you've now had a big 3 really form for this team. As Adam's saying, he's hitting it hard, 14 points per game, shooting 46% from 3. Cooper Norad, 41% 3-point shooter with about 20.5 points per game. And then Jake Feigen, who missed 4 games due to injury, he's back nearly 5 boards, 14.5 points. He shoots 46% from 3-point. And then you have a lot of mixing and shaking from there, like Josh Baldwin gives you 3 assists per game. Jacob Beasels has been able to give you about 3 assists per contest as well. And Cornell has had a bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. Outside the top 235 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they do have a lot of turnovers to be able to get those efficient shots. And for Cornell, they are currently outside the top 330 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. So they are going to give it up from the outside, but Cornell, also a pretty solid team on the glass. They've been a top 175 team with this regard. I do think that Cornell does just enough to hold in this game. But with Michigan State ascending with their 3-point shooting, I think that you get a nice high-scoring expose. So I did set my line here at 22. I'm willing to take the points with Cornell. Set my total 160, so I'm also in on the over. 829, 830 on the card. You've got Northern Kentucky on the road against Robert Morris. And old Bobby Morris is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. 149.5 is the total. Set my line at 2.5. So I'm going to be willing to lay 1.5 with Robert Morris. You've got a pair of teams that have been able to do a relatively bad job in terms of taking care of the ball, with Northern Kentucky about 238th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Robert Morris more like 248th, and Northern Kentucky 17th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, goes to 7th away from home. But with Robert Morris, they are going to have the edge on the glass. They've been a top 40 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and I think that Deshaun Good is going to be good to go for this team. 14.5 points, 9 boards. Right now shooting 60% from 3. That'll see a little bit of fall, but Nicholas Shadakoulis, 7 boards, 11.5 points per game. I think that these are going to be the guys that really win out for Robert Morris in this spot, so that's why I'm willing to lay this ball number with them. Ryan Prather is starting to get it going from 3-point range, only shooting about 32.5% for the season, but it's been much better in recent games. 13 points, right around about 3.3 assists per game. And for Robert Morris, they have been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And you do have a Northern Kentucky team that, while they do such a great job in terms of generating turnovers, they are still outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis because they gamble for turnovers. Outside the top 260 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And Northern Kentucky, to their credit, they're also a top 125 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. This is by only having one guy that gives you over 4.6 rebounds per game, and LJ Wells, 13 points, 8 boards, a block, 2 steals per game, so he's playing very Wells. And then Donovan Ode and Khalil Robinson have been able to combine for about 32.5 points per game between the two of them, 3.2 assists, 3.2 steals per game, so they've been able to do a nice job there. And Robinson right now shoots 47% from 3, and then Dan Gressinger, he shoots in the mid-30s from 3 with about 16 points per game, but it's a very top-heavy Northern Kentucky team. You pretty much have 6 different guys that play 25-plus minutes, and then you don't have a lot after that. I do think that with Robert Morris having a little bit more depth, that's going to be able to win out here, and I do like what Robert Morris is able to do down low a little bit more as well, and I do think that that's going to be enough to get the job done in a game where I think that there's going to be a lot of sloppiness and turnovers to kill the total. So somebody told 142.5 like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 2 with Robert Morris. 831, 832 on the card. Western Kentucky on the road against Jacksonville St. Jacksonville State finds themselves as a underdog here of 4.5 points on this game. It is 144.5, and set my line at 3. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Jacksonville State. You've got absolutely different styles here. Jacksonville State, in terms of total possessions per game, 350th in all of college basketball. Western Kentucky, they are 16th in the country. So good old situation of something's got to give. And for Western Kentucky, a solid defense, 144th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Roadside Neutral Court venue that goes up to the top 100. Jacksonville State, very similar defense, 157th in the country with that regard, but they're doing it in different ways. Jacksonville State has never been a team to generate turnovers. They are back outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they've been a top 50 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well, and this team just looks to be able to dominate the boards, as you got Benko Vunga, who's been able to give you 6.5 rebounds, only about 4 points per contest, but does a great job on the glass. Derek Erkins Ford has been able to give you about 7 points, 5 rebounds, and then Mustafa El Montequil has been that main man coming over from Louisiana, 18.5 points, 7.5 boards for a Jacksonville State team that is shooting about 33.5% from 3-point range, hovering right around about country average there. Leaves something to be desired with their free throw shooting as well. They shoot only about 64% at the charity stripe. If this were a case where Jacksonville State were the favorite instead of the underdog, I'd be very, very leery of that, but on the flip side, for Western Kentucky, you do have a unit that they're not necessarily the world's greatest shooting team as well, especially outside the top 300 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, but this is a squad that also does a great job on the boards. They're a top 125 team in terms of rebound percentage, and they've got good versatility with Tegan Moore supplying 17 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, a little bit of a steal per contest. Does not shoot it well from 3. He and Armello Boone. Boone is the number 2 scorer for the team. They both shoot below 21% from 3. I think there might be a little bit of positivity there with Boone 12 points, 5.5 boards, 2 assists, steal and per contest. So guys do a great job in terms of filling up the stat sheet. And Western Kentucky, top 55 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Brian Sarbungwe has been dealing with a little bit of injury. When he's been out there, he's been able to supply the team with about 7.7 rebounds per game, but looks like he might be out once again. We have not seen him over the last few weeks, but Ryan Myers is really that guy that gives them a little bit of pop from three, shooting about 45.5% from three. He supplies the team with 10 points per game, but this is a team that is very content to pile drive the ball inside. Western Kentucky, a top 75 team in terms of percentage of their shots that they take from 2-point range, but I do think that in the end, Jacksonville State is going to do just enough to be able to hold in this game because you've got sort of a make it and take it sort of game with both of these teams doing a solid job in terms of being able to grab offensive rebounds, in terms of not turning the ball over. And with this Jacksonville State team, allowing teams to shoot less than 45% on their 2-point shots. And additionally, you've got a nice go-to scorer for Jacksonville State, not quite what they had a season ago in Mr. Jerome Pierre, but with Mustafa El Montequil, I think that he's going to do just enough for the team to hold in there. Set my total at a 143, so like the under, and I'm going to be one thing the points with Jacksonville State, made them 3-point dog, 833, 834 on the card. It is Hampton, and they are going to be playing us to Stony Brook. Stony Brook does find themselves as a 1-1.5-point underdog. 140.5 to 141 is the total, and with Hampton, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 1 to 1.5. I also did set a total of 134.5, so I'm going to be in on this total under, as neither of these teams are pushing any sort of tempo whatsoever. You've got a Stony Brook team that's outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, and Hampton has really slowed themselves down in recent years. They are all the way down to 300th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a Hampton team that last year was pretty solid on the glass. This year they've been able to do a little bit of a better job defensively. They're now in the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and the Stony Brook defense, to their credit, they're about 125th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but are allowing about 18.4 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. And for Stony Brook, they did a nice job bringing in 2 guards to really elevate the offense from past years. Eric Pratt, 18 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, comes in from Milwaukee, but he shoots about 30% from 3. And then Hot Rod Brown, he comes over from Nichols, about 10.5 points. He's been shooting about 32% from 3 for a Stony Brook team in which the ancillary pieces have been solid from 3-point range. Thomas Vitini has been able to give you 7 points on about 40% 3-point shooting. Richard Goods has been trying to supply the goods with about 48% 3-point shooting. Actually comes over from Hampton, shoots 48% from 3 and 40% at the free throw line. So that's one that I don't understand, but 7.6 boards, right around about 3 assists per game. He's the lone guy on the roster, though, that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. This is a Stony Brook team that's outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound percentage. And for Stony Brook, their overall shooting percentages have been solid. They're inside the top 125 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And it's a Hampton team that certainly is not going to go bounce away from 3, about 300th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though. And for Hampton, top 100 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, with Xavier Long being the main man, 10 points, 11.1 rebounds, a little bit over 2 assists per game. Jaquale Gaines-Wyatt has been very versatile with about 11.5 points, 3.5 assists per game, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and then you've been able to get some active hands with Daniel Johnson throwing in there a steal, 5 boards. He shoots about 36% from 3, 9 points per game. I do think that this Hampton defense is going to be able to do just enough to be able to hold up here. Hampton has been a pretty rock-solid team in terms of getting to the free throw line as well. Top 80 team in terms of percentage of their possessions, and in a free throw, they're about 200th in the country in terms of free throw percentage, neither here nor there. So I think that you get a little bit of a slug and a lower scoring game. So by total 134.5, like the under, and with Hampton, I'm willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 835, 836 on the card. Northeastern on the road against Elon, and Elon is a favorite here of 5 to 5.5 points. So that's 155.5, and with Elon, I made them a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Northeastern team that is not taking care of the ball, 279th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're getting gash inside. They're 276th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They've been able to get a little bit down low with about 7 rebounds per game out of Xander Alari, who's been able to throw in there about 10.5 points, a little bit over a block per contest, but this has been a team that's really been suffering on offense without L.A. Pride. He had been averaging 17 points per game in the first 3 games and has not been seen ever since. So Yori Fritz, who averages 13 points, 5.5 boards, he's had to take on the lion's share of that. Team as a whole is only shooting about 33% from the outside, and they're also outside the top 200 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, all while having those turnovers. Now, they themselves are a top 170 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Elon has been one of the best mid-major offenses in all of college basketball, and this is an Elon team that all of a sudden is playing quite a bit more of tempo as well. Last year, they were closer to about 300th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Elon more about 152nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Northeastern mid-tempo team at about 185th in terms of total possessions per game. So I did set a total here of a 158.5. I do like the over with the way that Elon has had Chandler Cottrell do an amazing job, supply 21 points. Right now, he's only shooting about 31% from three, but the guys around him, Capper Klonzich, along with Randall Pettis II, are both supplying combined about 25 points per game between the two of them. Klonzich shoots 47.5% from three, more around 43% for Pettis, but Klonzich, 3 assists, 6 rebounds per game as a relatively solid and versatile big man, and then Bryson Cockley has been able to give you 11 points, 4 boards, and he shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range as well. Elon doing a great job taking care of the ball, a top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now the Elon defense leaving something to be desired, about 291st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 300 at home, but with the way that Northeastern has been a little bit sloppier with the ball and the way that Elon has done a tremendous job of being able to dominate the boards, they are now a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, with the way that Cottrell also throws in their 7+ rebounds per game. I do think that Elon finds a way to get the job done and take it to a Northeastern team that just has not been themselves around the perimeter, both on offense and defense, without L.A. Pratt. So my total at a 158.5. Like the over, and I like Elon here. Set them as a 12.5 point favorite. 837, 838 on the card. Wright St is going to be playing us to Oakland. Wright St looks to be the right side as they are a favorite of 1.5 to 2 points. Total on this game is 161.5, and I do think that they're the right side. I set them as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be 108 with Wright St. You've got an Oakland team that does a good job in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but as is normally the case, Oakland is not doing a good job on defense. They are outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, overall 334th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and a Wright St team that has been pretty miserable on defense in recent years. They're up to about 140th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Best that they've been in quite some time, and they have slowed down their tempo from past years, about 226th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Oakland, after they had been very slow the last few years, they have cranked it back up to about 63rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I did set a total of a 157.5 though. I like the under, as with Wright St they have become a top 80 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Big guy in terms of that is TJ Birch. How about 3 steals per game? A top 10 mark in all of college basketball. Only about 7 points per game. Doesn't give you a lot offensively, but also deals out about 3 assists per game. Michael Cooper, as a freshman, has stepped up in a big way from the outside. 16 points per game on 39.5% three-point shooting, 3 assists per game, and his team has been able to do a suitable job down low. You've only got one guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, Michael Barrage, who's been able to give you about 11.6 rebounds per game, but he's been able to give you a darn near a block per contest as well. And then you get a block and a half per game out of Andre Holden, who's been able to do a nice job as being a little bit of a rim protector. This is a Wright St team that really pushes things inside as well. They're a top 40 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from 2-point range. Now, they are outside the top 200 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but also a top 100 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. And this is an Oakland team that is very content to go bombs away from 3-point range. You've been able to have Brody Robinson come over from UT Arlington, supply this team with 16 points, 6 assists right now, shooting 38% from 3-point range for Oakland. In terms of the percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range, they're outside the top 250. They are very content to be driving the ball inside, but they shoot as collective about 36% from 3, top 125 mark in all of college basketball. Really not going to grab second and third chances outside the top 275 thirds of offensive rebound percentage, and they're making a take it sort of team outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Can be very much exploited inside. Oakland outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They have been a little bit better on the inside though, with Michael Hoagie, who missed the first 5 games of the season, supplying 15 points, right around about 4.5 rebounds per game. And then Isaac Garrett, he comes on up from the junior college level at 6'8", 14.5 points, 3 assists, a steal, 7 rebounds per game. Shot it well at the junior college level from 3-point range. Hasn't done a lot of that here with this team, but Zaire Wells is now shooting 42% from 3-point range. So interesting circumstance here. I do think that Wright St is going to be able to generate some turnovers. This is an Oakland team that's good at not putting teams on the free throw line. Top 50 team with regards to fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis. So made a total of 157.5. Like the under, and with Wright St, I'm willing to lay up to 5 with them. 839, 840 on the card. You've got Southern Illinois, and they're going to be playing on the road against Murray State. Murray State is a pretty mid-sized favorite here. You're going to be finding them at about a 6.5 with regards to what they're laying. Total on this game between 165.5 165.5 to a 167, and somehow line at 8.5. So going to be willing to lay the 6.5 with Murray State. Murray State is very much looking to push tempo. In terms of total possessions per game, this team is out all the way up to 43rd in the country, and Southern Illinois, year number 2 under Scott Nagy, they're starting to play that Scott Nagy style, as they were pretty mid-tempo last season. This year, they've now found themselves at about 55th in terms of total possessions per game, but the problem for Southern Illinois is that this team has no three-point shooting. As a matter of fact, they're a top 15 team in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point line, with Coloron House being the lone double-figure scorer, and he's done a nice job giving the team 3 assists, 14.5 points per game, and for Southern Illinois, they have been good with regards to their interior offense. They're in the top 100 with regards to two-point shooting percentage. They shoot 27.4% from three-point range. That's a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball right now. Drew Stoffy shoot 31.5% from three. He's throwing in there 9.5 points per game. Among players that take at least a half a three per game, he, along with Damian Mayo, are the only two guys that shoot above 31% from three-point range. So, great to say the least. Now, you've had Aljibi squared in Rollins Aljibi and Prince Aljibi do a nice job in tandem, giving combined about 12.5 rebounds per game. For Southern Illinois, they have ascended to being a top 150 team in terms of rebound percentage, but they're also right around about 300th with regards to their free throw shooting percentage. They shoot less than 68% as a collective, and Murray State is very content to have teams drive the ball inside. Murray State is a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from two-point range, and they've been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Murray State, they shoot it well from three. They're a top 50 team, shooting 37.5% from the outside, with Javon Jackson lead the way with 16 points, 2.5 assists. She shoots 42% from three. JJ Traynor, Roman Dean, these guys have been able to combine to shoot about 38% from three-point range with Roman Dahman. He's been able to give you about 12.5 points per game, and then Mason Miller, he shoots 50% from three-point range, a three-point maestro with about 8.5 points, 4 rebounds per game, and Murray State, for as fast as they're playing, they're a top 175 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Now, they've been giving up a lot of second and third chances outside the top 150 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but this team does a good job in terms of pushing teams off the three-point line. This is a Southern Illinois team that has been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers as well. They become a top 150 team in terms of turnovers force on a per-possession basis, but with the Southern Illinois team having so many difficulties from around the outside and being outside the top 225 in terms of taking care of the ball, I do think that Murray State gets the job done here. So I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it in. So I total 164.5. So here are the 165 plus. I just don't think that Southern Illinois does their part from the outside. I'm in on the under 841, 842 on the card. Iona's on the road against Mount St. Mary's, and the Mount is a 4.5 point home underdog. Total this game 154.5 to 155.5. Set a total of a 151.5. I like the under mainly because Mount St. Mary's is not doing a good job at all of taking care of the ball outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now with Mount St. Mary's, when they don't turn the ball over, they've been a solid offense. They're in the top 200 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, with Orlando Keys leading the way with about 12 points, 3.3 assists, shoots about 35% from three, and then Xavier Lipscomb, he's been the do-it-all sort of player for this team. 11 points, 4.5 assists, 5 rebounds. He shoots 40% from 3-point. So I have to love what those guys are able to bring to the table. And this is a team that's been able to do a pretty solid job with regards to their overall rebounding. They're a top 200 team with regards to rebound percentage, despite the fact that they don't all in there a lot of second and third chances, but 17 turnovers per game while being outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they don't generate any turnovers themselves. Mount St. Mary's outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and that's been a little bit of an Achilles heel for Iona. Iona is a team that turns the ball over about 11.5 times per game. They're about country average in terms of generating turnovers themselves, but with this Iona team, despite the fact that they'll allow some second chances, they're outside the top 300 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. I did have to set them here as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Iona team has been pretty solid in terms of guarding the perimeter, top 125 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and CJ Anthony, who's come over from Cincinnati, 16 points, 6 assists to about 2.7 turnovers per game, shoots 39% for three. Toby Harris shoots 45% for three with 13 points per game. I remember Keshawn Williams over at Northern Illinois a few years ago, so a really dynamic scorer, up to about 9.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from 3 points, and then Luke Jungers is a guy that shoots 48% from the outside. With the way that Mount St. Mary's is just not guarding the perimeter, I think that Iona is going to be able to exploit that. I just flat out don't think that Mount St. Mary's is able to do their part with this total, despite Iona being a very up-tempo team. With Iona, they're currently 38th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Mount St. Mary's mid-tempo at about 158th, but I think the turnovers cost you an over, so I set my total 151.5, like the under, and with Iona, I'm willing to lay up to 5 with them. 843, 844 on the card. You've got Fairfield, and they're going to be playing us at St. Peter's, and the Peacocks are a 3.5 to a 4.5 point underdog. 138.5 to 140 is the total line. I set Fairfield as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Fairfield. This team does a really good job in terms of taking care of the ball, top 85 team, in terms of few turnovers on a per possession basis, and for Fairfield, this is a unit that I think is going to see some positivity with their shooting. Right now, they are outside the top 300 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but they make up for it on the offensive glass. A top 40 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, with Brandon Benjamin being a main reason why. 4 offensive rebounds per game, 9.7 boards overall, 12.5 points, a block and a half per game. You've got Deuce Turner down for what? Give you 9.5 points. He's been able to shoot about 36.5% from 3, but Braden Sparks has been living up to his name. He's been able to give the team some sparks. 18 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists, shooting 45% from 3-point, while Cam Esteves, who comes over from Rhode Island, was dealing with a little bit of injury towards the beginning part of the season, and a few years ago at Rhode Island, he was a part-time starter, only about 5 points per game, but I think we'll see him ascend as the season goes along, as he's been able to shoot about 35% from 3-point range. And on the flip side, you've got a St. Peter's team that has, in the past, been a team has been very much a low-tempo team, and they're back to being that once again. They're outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but with St. Peter's, typically, they do a nice job defensively. They're always going to be sure-handed on the glass, and certainly they're grabbing second and third chances for themselves, top 125 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, but they're allowing teams to be able to grab a lot of rebounds as well. Now they've fallen in regards to overall rebound percentage outside the top 225. Brett Bland has had to be the main man, 16 points, 3 steals. That's a top 10 mark at all of college basketball, shooting 40% from 3. And unlike in the past, St. Peter's now a top 30 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they're overly aggressive once again. They're a top 15 team in terms of putting teams on the free throw line. They're actually outside the top 300 now in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. You've got TJ Robinson, who's been supplying the team with about 12.5 points, 3 assists per game, but doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3. Outside of Bland, you really don't have anyone else on the roster other than Eric Morgan Jr., so with injury, and has only been able to average 4 points per game, shooting above 33% from the outside. You've got Akantuo Bakare being able to give you about 7 points per game. He's been shooting about 33% from 3 himself, but it's been a little bit hit or miss what you've been able to get there. And with Fairfield being able to grab those second and third chances against the St. Peter's team that has really seen a diminishment with regards to rebounding, and it's a bunch in Fairfield that's probably going to be able to get a lot of free throws. They shoot 72.5% of the free throw line, right around country average. With them being able to take care of the ball the way that they do, I think that they get the job done in a little bit of a slog of a game. Fairfield is a relatively mid-tempo team in terms of total possessions per game, checking in about 208th, and once again, St. Peter's very slow once again at 313. So set a little bit of a lower total here, made by total a 132.5. So in on the under, and we'll delay with Fairfield. 845, 846 on the card. UTEP is on the road. They're facing off against Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is a favorite of 3 to 3.5 points. Total is between 128.5 to a 127.5, and with Louisiana Tech, I'm going to be willing to lay it. I did set them as an 8-point favorite with Louisiana Tech. They do a nice job in terms of playing a nice, slow and controlled game, 342nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UTEP, not a blazer themselves, are right now about 309th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and UTEP, once again, doing a great job in terms of generating turnovers. Top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they gamble for turnovers, and because they focus so much on generating turnovers and the perimeter play, they leave themselves very vulnerable down low. 263rd, third of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage, while Louisiana Tech 57th with regards to rebound percentage, with Caden Cooper leading the way on that front. 8.5 boards, 11.5 points per game. AJ Bates along with DJ Dudley, they've been able to combine for about 24 points per game to lead the way, and these two guys actually combined to shoot 40% from 3, which that's contrary to the rest of the team. The rest of the team, nobody else on the roster shoots about 29.5% from 3-point range, but you've been able to have Scooter Williams Jr. come over from East Texas A&M, supply about 10 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. And for Louisiana Tech, they've had some difficulties taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security, but they've also been a top 140 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. The teams are shooting 24% from 3-point range against them. Now, I do think that that's a number that's going to be going a little bit northward moving forward, but this is not a UTEP team that's going to completely light you up from 3. Outside the top 275, shooting about 31.5% from 3-point range. Elijah Jones has had to be the main man for them, shooting 32.5% from the outside, 14.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but but Jamal West, who pulls in 6.5 rebounds, a steal, a block per game, 13.5 points per game, lone man on the roster with at least 4.5 rebounds per game. And as a matter of fact, with Jones, West, and Kasim Watson, who gives you 4.5 boards and 10 points per game, they're the lone three guys on the team that give you at least 3 rebounds per game. So this team is very vulnerable inside. You don't have a lot of three-point shooting. Caleb Blackwell does shoot 36% from three with about 9.5 points per game, but despite UTEP doing a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, they themselves outside the top 250 with their own ball security, and for UTEP, 64.5% free throw shooting team. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. Do think that Louisiana Tech goes out there, gets the job done in a game that is going to be a slog. It's going to be super slow and not a lot of scoring. Semi-total 126 in on the under, and I'm willing to lay it with Louisiana Tech. 847, 848 on the card. It is Houston, and they play us to Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is a sizable underdog of 26 to 27.5 points. 135.5 to 138.5 is the total, and made my total a 135.5. So you're at a 136 plus, which I'm mostly seeing. I'm going to be in on the under. Houston is still a relatively slow and controlled team. They played that harebrained game against Arkansas a few weeks ago, but still this is a unit that is a top 10 mark in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Houston, I do think that they're going to get back to their old ways of playing very slow, very controlled in terms of total possessions per game. Still a team that is clocking in right around about 290th in all of college basketball. And on the flip side, you've got a Middle Tennessee team that they're not really super duper fast. They're not necessarily super duper slow either in terms of total possessions per game. They've been playing more in that neighborhood of about 178, so about as country average as it gets. And Middle Tennessee has always been a really good three-point shooting defensive team. They're back at the top 75 with that regard. Overall, they're about 236, though. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're taking it on the chin a little bit more down low. So Chris Senek, who's been able to supply Houston with 8+ rebounds per game, he should be able to have a good time of it. Joseph Tugler has been able to throw in there about 5 rebounds per game as well. Meanwhile, for Middle Tennessee, your main man down low has been Tori Elson, who stands there 6'8", but has been able to supply the team with about 12.5 points, 8 rebounds per game. For Middle Tennessee, they shoot about 32.5% from three, outside the top 225 in all of college basketball. Javon Carter has been the main scorer with about 13 points, 3 assists per game, and Middle Tennessee in past years has been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis this season, though. And I do think that Houston going to do a nice job in terms of flowing their offense, even with Milo Suzanne taking a little bit of setback from where he was a season ago. He's been given away to Kingston Flemings, who's become a really good go-to scorer, 15 points, 5 assists, right now shooting 48% from three. Uzan shooting only 27% from the outside. Certainly think that we see some positivity there, but he still give the team 5 assists, only about 1.4 turnovers per game. And for Houston, this has been a pretty efficient offense. This is still a top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're still a top 30 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on the defensive side of things as well. And for Houston, they're going to do a great job in terms of owning the glass. They're a top 50 team with regards to rebound percentage. I think the Middle Tennessee going to have a very tough time matching up with that, along with Emmanuel Sharp, give you about 17.5 points per game. I did set a line here of a 25.5. Right now, we're seeing this getting up to 26.5 to 27. This opened up at a 23, but now it's just gotten to a little bit of a point of no return, especially with myself thinking that this is going to be a slower game. So I'm going to be in on the under, and with this Middle Tennessee bunch, we'll take 26 plus with them. 849, 850 on the card. LSU is playing us to Southern Miss. Southern Miss is an underdog of 18.5 to 19.5 points. 156.5 to 157.5 is the total, and made by total a 155.5. I do like the under for LSU. Top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they have been significantly better at home versus away from home with Southern Miss. This is a mid-tempo team. They're about 223rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. LSU has slowed down a little bit as well, being about 148th in terms of total possessions per game. So that's a big reason why I am in on the under. And with Southern Miss, I did set them as a 19.5 point underdog, so 19 is my maximum lay with LSU. For this Southern Miss team, I just think that they're going to lose that battle along the perimeter, as right now they are outside the top 275 with their own three-point shooting percentage at right around about 31.5%. Your top 2 scorers, Isaac Tavares and Tawik Weeks, these guys have been very good. They've been able to combine for about 33.5 points per game, but they both shoot sub 25% from three-point range. They do combine for about 3.5 steals per game, so that's been pretty rock solid for a team that is about country average in terms of both turnovers on a per possession basis on offense and on defense. Kurt Lewis, a very highly touted junior college guy a few seasons ago, only gives you about 6.5 points per game now, has been able to shoot about 38.5% from three-point range, but probably going to need a little bit more volume there. Southern Miss's main forte has been doing a solid job on the glass. They become a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, but Markel Sutton should be allowed LSU win that battle. For Sutton, he's been able to supply the team with 15 plus points, over 8 rebounds per game, and for LSU, they are dealing with a few injuries. They did have Jalen Reed go down early on during the season, but De'Don Thomas, he's the real heartbeat of this offense, the main facilitator with 6.7 assists per game, 15.5 points per contest for an LSU team that is in the top 80 in terms of ball security. They're a top 25 team with regards to free throw shooting percentage, so they're doing the little things well. LSU is a bit vulnerable from the outside. They're outside the top 235 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but much stronger with their interior defense. So against a Southern Miss team that is stronger on the inside, that means that LSU is not going to have that kryptonite really be unmasked as much. And then with Michael Nwoko, 15.5 points, 5.5 boards, he's been rock solid down low. I think that LSU continues to keep things clean on offense and find a way to get the job done. I just think that with the amount of possessions that you get in this game, it's just enough for the under. Semi-total 155.5, so do like the under. And with LSU, we'll lay up to 19 with them. 851, 852 on the card. Valparaiso on the road facing off against Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa is an 11.5 to a 12.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 126 to a 128.5, and for Northern Iowa, I set them as an 11.5 point favorite. So with Northern Iowa, now that this is getting up to a 12 plus, it just becomes my minimum buy point on Valparaiso. It's a Valparaiso team that has actually done a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball and doing the little things well. They're just not a very good shooting team for Valparaiso right now. They find themselves outside the top 275 in terms of both their 2-point shooting percentage and their 3-point shooting percentage, but they're inside the top 120 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they've been a top 150 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And to the credit of Valparaiso, top 80 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound. Northern Iowa outside the top 3 with that regard for this Valparaiso bunch. Owen Dees and Rakeem Chaney, they combine for 23 points per game, 11.5 apiece, and both shoot over 40% from 3. They're pretty much the only of their top 7 scorers that shoot above 31.5% from 3-point range. JT Pettigrew, he's been able to throw in their 5.5 boards, 7 points per game. Sean Tapula has been able to give you about 7 rebounds, a block and a half, 8 points per game. So these guys have been able to do a pretty nice job down low. And Northern Iowa, not a team that's going to give you a lot of second and third chances, but they don't let you grab a lot of second and third chances either. For Northern Iowa, they've been a top 225 team in terms of that defensive rebound percentage, and they're a top 40 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. Northern Iowa just doing a nice job, flowing good, clean offense, top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, with Trey Campbell and Leon Bond leading the way, combined for 27 points per game. Campbell gives you 2.3 steals per game, and this is a Northern Iowa team that does a great job with their takeaways. Top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense, and then Tristan Smith, he supplies the team with about 5.5 boards, about 10.5 points per game. Ben Schwieger has some good versatility with about 7.5 points per game. Shoots about 32.5% from 3-point range. Max Weisbrod has been dealing with a little bit of an injury, so Kyle Pock has been seeing some more minutes, and now he shoots 37% from 3 with 5.5 points per game. I do think that Northern Iowa going to do a nice job in terms of slowing this game down. They are well outside the top 325 in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Valparaiso team that they're more around about 213th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so do you think that you get a bit of a slog here, semi-total at a 127.5. Now that we're getting down to 126, 126.5, I do think with the way that Valparaiso takes care of the ball, that's going to be just enough to be able to get you the over. So do like the over, and at 12 plus, we'll take those points with Valparaiso. 853, 854 on the card. Arkansas plays host to James Madison. James Madison, our nation's 4th president, is a 23.5 to a 25-point underdog. 161.5 to 163 is the total end for James Madison. I did set them as an underdog of 22.5 points. So here at 23 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points with James Madison. This team is once again playing slow and controlled. They're outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, and you've got an Arkansas team that all of a sudden is just really gunned it. For Arkansas, they are up to now 57th in terms of total possessions per game, but it seems like they've been getting faster and faster as the season goes along, and James Madison has been the exact opposite. For James Madison, you've got a pair of guards that I do like. Bradley Douglas is a main facilitator, 4.5 assists, 14.5 points per game, shoots about 34.5% 42% from three. And then Cliff Davis, he's able to supply about 12 points, throws in there a bit over a steal per game. He only shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but Justin McBride has been really that top scorer, 17 points, 6 boards, shoots 48% from three-point range for a James Madison team that has been shooting over 34% from three-point range away from home. So their three-point shooting has been able to travel relatively well. You've got Eddie Ricks down low, who's been able to give you 7 rebounds per game. He's been in the Preston Spradlin system ever since he was over at Morehead State. Meanwhile, for Arkansas, this has been a very efficient offense in that they both play fast and they don't turn the ball over. This is a top 30 team in terms of ball security with fewer than 10 turnovers per game, with the freshmen Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff leading the way. Acuff, your main scorer, 6 assists, 19 points per game, shoots over 43% from three. Thomas, more of a mid-30s three-point shooter, but throws in there a little bit over a steal per game for an Arkansas team that has been, shall we say, a little bit hit or miss with regards to their defense, but they keep you off the free throw line, a top 50 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been a top 75 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. So makes the total very fascinating here. I did set mine at a 154.5. I do think that James Madison could have some success slowing things down coming off the break. I do think that Arkansas might be a little bit sluggish out the gates, though you do have Trevon Brazil given really good versatility. 46% three-point shooter, 14.7 rebounds per game. Carter Knox shooting 47% from the outside, 9 points per game. And this has been a JMU team that's been a little bit, shall we say, suspect with regards to guarding the three-point line, but that has been improving in recent games. They're back in the top 185 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. James Madison not going to force any turnovers outside the top 3 with that regard, but I do think that James Madison does enough to be able to slow this game down and hold in there. So my line at 22.5 will take those points with James Madison, like the under as well. So my total 154.5, 855, 856 on the card. Bradley plays host to Evansville. Evansville is a 12 to a 12.5 point underdog. It's all in this game between 135.5 to a 136.5, and with Evansville, I set them as an underdog of 13 points. So 12.5 is the most I'm willing to lay with Bradley, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Braves, as this Bradley team has been able to do a really nice job in terms of generating turnovers. Top 45 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And for Bradley, they're not the same three-point shooting team that they were a season ago last year. Top 10 team with regards to three-point shooting percentage, more around country average, 34.2% this year, but they've been eating up as the season goes along. And your top 2 scorers, Alex Hubergerse along to Quan Johnson, have been both combined shoot about 38.5% from three. Hubergerse also shoots 93% the free throw line, 12.5 points, a steal per game. And then Johnson, how about 3.6 steals per game? Top 5 mark in the country, 18.5 points, and he's also been able to throw in there a little bit over 4 boards per contest. Bradley's been a pretty solid team in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances on the defensive glass. They themselves don't give themselves a lot of second and third chances, but you've got Amit Janovic, who's a true 7'1" big man, who's able to give you 6.5 points, 4.5 boards, about a block and a half per contest. So they've been pretty solid on the interior. As for Bradley, they're a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well, and this is an Evansville team that has had a rough time in terms of taking care of the ball outside the top 240 with that regard, and neither of these teams are really going to be looking to push a lot of tempo. Evansville right now clocking in about 248th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Bradley looking to push a little bit more tempo at 121st. This is unlike what they typically have done in the past, but I think as conference play comes along, they're going to slow things down a little bit, but Evansville also well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as they're outside the top 275 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Not doing a bad job on the defensive glass. Top 150 team in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances, as your top 3 scorers, AJ Casey, Joshua Hughes, Connor Turnbull, all between 5.2 and 6.5 rebounds per game, and Turnbull does give you 3 blocks to go along with his 14.5 points per game, and Hughes at 6'8", he shoots 43% from three-point range, but he is the lone out of their top 6 scorers that shoots above 33% from three-point range, and I do think that Bradley is going to do a nice job in terms of generating some turnovers. Evansville, they themselves top 150 team in terms of generating turnovers, so this is a line that I set at 13. I'm willing to lay with Bradley. Set my total at a 137, as Bradley seems to be heating up with their three-point shooting, so right now seeing a lot of 136, 136.5, like that over to go along with Bradley laying the number. 857, 858 on the card. UT Arlington plays us at Tarleton St. Tarleton St, a 2.5 to a 3.5 point dog. 138.5 to a 139.5 is the total, and made a total of a 141.5. I like the over, as Tarleton St has really sped up. They're now in the top 70 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they're still doing a great job in terms of generating turnovers. This is a top 10 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. UT Arlington, bottom 20 team in terms of taking care of the ball, as UT Arlington has been turning the ball over darn near 15 times per game, and they've actually slowed down to being outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. And for UT Arlington, this has actually been a really good defense. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they've been allowing teams to shoot only 24% from 3-point range. That's a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. Overall, 53rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But I just don't think that 3-point shooting percentage defense is going to be here to stay. And for Tarleton St, this is a team that's much better on offense than what they have been in the past, especially with Dior Johnson back. He was dealing with an injury for about 4 or so games. He's right now averaging 22.5 points per game, a former top 75 recruit that's really been able to elevate this team. Freddie Hicks has been in and out of the lineup a little bit, but he should be good to go in this one as well. He's been that number 2 man with 12 points, 6.5 boards, 3 assists per game, and well, he doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3-point range. You've got other options, like you've been able to have Leroy Kelly step up, shoot about 35.5% from 3. Kaya Isaac has been able to shoot 39% from 3. Despite the fact that this team has dealt with so many injuries, they're still doing a great job in terms of generating those turnovers. And for UT Arlington, they had to pretty much replace everyone aside from Rayshon Semester, who's been top scorer for this team, 14.5 points, 6.5 boards, and he's only shooting about 27.5% from 3. And for Arlington, they only shoot as a collective about 29.5% from 3. That is outside the top 325 in all of college basketball. They're very content to pile drive the ball down low, as they've been a top 35 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line. Casimir Chavis, along with Marcel McCreary, they've been able to combine for about 22.5 points per game, and McCreary shoots 36% from 3. Pretty much the only other top 6 scorers that shoots above 29% from the outside. Marcus Rigsby, he's been able to give the team about 5 points per game, and he does shoot above 32% from 3 himself, but just not on a lot of volume. And I do think that this is going to be a game that involves a lot of turnovers, but with the way that Tarleton St is cranking things up and the way that, unlike in past years, they're turning those turnovers into fast break opportunities on the offensive side of things, I do think that gets you the over. So by total 141.5, and I think that Tarleton St takes advantage of a team that's having a very difficult time being able to protect the ball. So set Tarleton St as a 3.5 point favorite. I'd like Tarleton on the money line to go along with the over. 859, 860 on the card. You've got Yale, and they're going to be on the road against Alabama, and Alabama does find themselves as a favorite of 16.5 to 17 points. 175.5 to 177 is the total. Settle a total of a 173.5. I like the under, and you're going to have dueling styles here. Now, both of these teams are top 50 teams in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Yale is a top 30 team. So they've really done a nice job in terms of excelling on that front. But you've got an Alabama team that's 11th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Yale is 322nd. Yale just really executes their stuff, and with both of these teams, it's sort of a make it and take it sort of style. Alabama well outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Yale, they're outside the top 200 in terms of generating turnovers as well. Yale's just shot 43.5% from 3, and I think that there's going to be a little bit of regression there, but Nick Towson shooting 54% from 3 with 17 points, 7.5 rebounds per game has been remarkable. Riley Fox has been able to give you 13 points. He shoots 34.5% from 3. Trevor Mullen has been able to shoot 38% from 3 with about 10 points per contest. So all these guys are executing really well, and for Yale, they're a good team on the glass as well. Yale's been a top 100 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Solid in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Solid in terms of not allowing opponents to have those second and third chances as well. While Alabama, they have been a team that's been a little bit rough on the glass. They are outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now LeBaron Filan, 22 points per game on 42% 3-point shooting has been tremendous. And Aiden Hallways out shooting 43% from the outside, 16.5 points, 3.5 assists per game. I do believe that this team is going to continue to get a little bit better down low moving forward, with Aiden Terrell providing 3 blocks, 9 points, and 6 rebounds per game. And they were dealing with Kenton Bariso having an injury towards the beginning part of the season. In the 6 games that he's played, 5 points, 5 rebounds, he's been able to give this team a really nice spark. And for Alabama, you know that this team is going to be very much launching from 3. They take more 3s than 2s, and they're shooting about 35% from the outside. And for Alabama, it's not saying much, but the defense has been a little bit better this year than it has been in past years. Again, this is an Alabama team that typically finds themselves well outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Right now, they're finding themselves more in that neighborhood of about 158th in the country. And for this Yale team, they're a team that has taken a few steps back on defense from really their main heyday. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're actually allowing about 9.5 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. I think that Yale is going to be able to slow things down, just execute their stuff enough to be able to hold in this game. So set a total of 173.5. I like the under and the points here with Yale. 861, 862 on the card. Cal Baptist is on the road against Utah Valley. Utah Valley is a pretty small favorite here. You're going to be laying about 7.5 to 8 points with them, and the total on this game between 141.5 to 143.5. And with Utah Valley. Could I set them as a 5.5 point favorite? I'm going to be willing to take the points with Cal Baptist. Utah Valley outside the top 340 in terms of ball security. They're turning the ball over nearly 15 times per game, and I think that that's what's going to be able to keep this Cal Baptist team very lively in this game. Cal Baptist, not necessarily generating a lot of turnovers, but they're able to match what Utah Valley is able to do on the glass. Cal Baptist, a top 35 team with regards to rebound percentage. They don't give you a lot of scoring, but Thomas Endong has been able to give you about 8 rebounds, 6.5 points per game, and Brady Henjai, 4.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. That's a true 7-footer. Now, Cal Baptist leaves something to be desired with their 3-point shooting. Outside the top 260 with regards to that, Martell Williams, this is how he does it. Shoots 35.5% from 3, 15 points per game. He's their number 2 scorer with about 5 boards per contest, and then Dominique Daniels, your main guy, with about 21 points per game. He only shoots about 28.5% from 3, but 4 assists, 4.5 rebounds, does a nice job in terms of stuff of the stat sheet, and then you've had Jaden Jackson deal with quite a bit of an injury. He's been out for about 6 games for the team, but just returned in that most recent game against Sacramento State before break. He had 12 points there. They should be able to give the team a little bit of a plug with regards to their backcourt play. He's a mid-30s 3-point shooter, so that's going to be able to help out quite a bit. And then for Utah Valley, even though they do turn the ball over quite a bit, I still really do like their point guard in Mr. Trayvon Leonard. He supplies 10 points, 5.5 boards, 6.8 assists. The turnovers needs to work on that, but also shoots 39% from 3. And Utah Valley has seen their 3-point shooting percentage go northward. They're close to about 100th in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage, with Tyler Hendricks coming over from Central Florida, shooting about 50% from 3, 13 points, 5 rebounds, a steal per contest, and then Jackson Holcomb, he just does it all. Block and a half, 3.5 assists, 8 rebounds, 15.5 points. He shoots only about 13% from 3, so that's the one thing that he doesn't do, but it is a Utah Valley team that they themselves very much pride themselves on being a top 40 team in terms of their own rebound percentage. They are line teams that shoot only about 29.5% from 3, and they've been a top 50 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They play the sort of like 40 minutes of HE double hockey 6 style because they do play a little bit more up-tempo, about 160th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cal Baptist a little bit slower at about 228th. I do think that this is going to be a relatively controlled game in which both teams do a nice job on the glass, but I think that this game is close enough for late game fouling, and I think that Cal Baptist, with getting Jackson back, sees a little bit of a rise in their outside shooting. So semi-total 143.5. I like the over, and with Cal Baptist, won't take 6+ with them. 863, 864 on the card. Fort Wayne on the road against UW Milwaukee. UW Milwaukee is a small favorite of 2.5 points. 158.5 is the total line. Set Milwaukee is a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Fort Wayne. This team always does a very good job in terms of winning the turnover battle. Top 100 team in terms of both turnovers forced on a per possession basis and their own ball security. But what they do for being able to win the turnover battle, they typically lose on the boards. And that's the case once again this year outside the top 255 in terms of rebound percentage. Only have one player on the roster that's able to give you more than 5 rebounds per game. That'd be Darius Selfie. About 6 points, 5 rebounds, a little bit of a block per contest. And Corey Ednott has been a really nice go-to scorer. 2.5 steals, 20 points, 2.7 assists. Shoots about 39% from 3. And DeAndre 3000 Craig, who comes over from Denver, he shoots 39% from 3-point range as well. But this is a squad that just has had a very rough time in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line themselves. They're right around about 300th in the country in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And I do think that UW Milwaukee going to be able to exploit that, shall we say, somewhat suspect defense. Neither of these teams are necessarily playing at warp speed. UW Milwaukee is right around about 170th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And with this Purdue Fort Wayne team, they're about 108th. So Purdue Fort Wayne playing a little bit more up-tempo, but not necessarily totally gunning it. But for UW Milwaukee, they're a top 55 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Danilo Janovic, who comes over from SMU, 2.5 assists, 6.5 boards, 14 points per game. Very versatile at 6'8" and he shoots over 50% for 3, albeit on very low volume. And then you've had Faison Fields also supplies 6.5 boards with about 7.5 points per game. Seth Hubbard, who comes on over from the MAC, 16.5 points, steal per game, and he's been able to really elevate his 3-point shooting for past years as well. He shoots 36% for 3. Milwaukee as a whole, they only shoot about 32.5% from 3. And they do have an Achilles heel of giving it up from 3. Teams are shooting 39% from the outside against them. That's a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. But for Milwaukee, they also do a really good job in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. With Milwaukee, they've slowed down a little bit more. That's allowed them to be a bit more efficient on the offensive side of things. Outside the top 200 in terms of both 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. But the way that they grab second and third chances, I think is going to be just enough to be able to get the job done here. And I do think that Fort Wayne is going to be able to knock knockdowns and threes. I set my total here at a 158.5. At a 158 or less, I'm in on the over. I know that we saw some 158s a little bit earlier, so if we can get down to a 158, wanted to take a shot on the over, and we'll delay up to 4 with Milwaukee. 865, 866 on the card. Arizona's playing us to South Dakota State. South Dakota State, an underdog of 31.5 points. Total on this game between 158.5 to a 160.5, and with Arizona, I did set them as a 29.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to take the points with South Dakota State. South Dakota State under the first season of Mr. Brian Peterson, great name, and they've been really playing a little bit more slowly than what you'd think for a South Dakota State team. South Dakota State, in terms of total possessions per game, they are clocking in a little bit outside the top 250, more around about 268th. Meanwhile, for Arizona, this is a team that they always like to play at a relatively fast tempo, not necessarily as fast as in past years, about 82nd in the country with this regard, but it's an Arizona team that's very balanced. Top 35 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, with actually being a little bit more efficient on defense this year. But for South Dakota State, quartet of different guys with between 10.4 and 13 points per game between Jackson, Gary, Joe Saylor, and Damian Wilkinson, I think is going to do just enough to help them hold in there. And South Dakota State, once again, pretty good on the defensive glass. Top 55 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so opponents are not grabbing a lot of offensive rebounds in second and third chances. Now they go up against an Arizona team that has more size, and I do think that they are going to unsully that a little bit. For Arizona, you've got Toby Awaka down low, who's been coming off the bench for about 10.5 rebounds and 9.5 points per game. You've had Braden Burris actually become the top scorer for the team, a little bit under the radar in terms of the national freshman. 36% three-point shooter, 14 points, 2.5 assists, 2.5 per contest. Koa Pete has slowed down a little bit with regards to scoring, but still give you about 5 boards, 3 assists. Nice versatility there, but just doesn't really shoot it from 3. And Jaden Bradley's right now shooting 53% from 3. That should see a little bit of fall off, though I do think that the overall three-point shooting of Arizona at 37.5%, I think that that's going to be consistent. This Arizona team has been a top 55 team in terms of grabbing second and third chances, top 10 team with regards to rebound percentage, and Arizona, also about 100th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. South Dakota State, country average in terms of being able to take care of the ball, neither great nor terrible there, and this is a South Dakota State team that has been solid in terms of guarding the three-point line. They encourage teams to take a lot of threes, and teams are shooting about 32% from the outside there. Do you think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game, especially with South Dakota State slowing things down, set by total 153.5, like the under, and at 30 plus, take the points with the Jackrabbits. 867, 868 on the card. Drake is going to be playing us Illinois State, and Illinois State is a 2.5 to a 3-point road favorite. Total on this game between 147 to a 148.5, and with the Drake, I set them as an underdog of 2.5 points. So at a 3 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points. This is a Drake team that's looking to play quite slowly, 299th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For Illinois State, a little bit more of a, shall we say, slow and controlled team themselves, 226th in the country with this regard. And for Illinois State last year, they had some difficulties in terms of their defense. They've been able to do a much better job this season, as right now they are checking in more around about 61st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Drake is right around about a country average team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But if you look at what they've been able to do in a road/court environment, they've been a top 65 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and a top 50 team away from home in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And for Illinois State, they certainly have some solid 3-point shooting. They bring back from a season ago Johnny Kinzinger, who's been able to give you 12 points, 2.5 assists, and he's right now shooting 34% from 3. I think that goes northward. And then the ancillary guys have actually been really your top 3-point shooters. Mason Klabo, Bowden Skunberg, and Terry Coleman all shoot at least 42% from 3-point range. Skunberg and Coleman about 10.5 points per game apiece. Klabo more around about 6 points per contest. But you've seen Chase Walker not really give you a lot from the outside. 12.5 points, 5.5 boards, so he's still been rock solid down low, but right now shooting 15% from 3-point range. And for Illinois State, they sort of play a make it and take it sort of style. They're a top 55 team in terms of view of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, outside the top 270 in terms of generating those turnovers, but they've been much better in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line. Top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But for Drake, I do think that they're going to do a nice job in terms of just being able to own the paint. This is a Drake team that has not generated for themselves a lot of second and third chances. They are a team that's outside the top 275 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but again, with that 2-point shooting percentage defense, along with the fact that this team has been relatively okay from the outside. They're shooting 37% for 3-point range, country average in terms of guarding the 3-point line. I think that that's going to be helpful, and for Drake, they're a top 30 team in terms of few turnovers on a per possession basis as well, with Jalen Quinn coming over from Loyola Chicago, shooting 34% from 3, 18 points, 3.5 assists per game. Oku Frederico down low, about 6 boards, block and a half per contest, and then Wilkins Exacte has been able to supply about 5.5 rebounds, 9 points points per game. This team is just very versatile, well-rounded, and then Jashawn Thomas shooting 34% from three, I think is just enough for Drake to be able to remain lively in this game, and I do think that this is going to be a relatively low possession game. I set my total at 142.5, like the under, and at 3+, won't take those points with Drake. 869, 870 on the card. Southern Utah is on the road against Utah Tech. Utah Tech is a 6.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 144.5, and I say Utah Tech is an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Utah Tech. Certainly not the same team that we've seen in the past as typically with Utah Tech. This is a team that's very vulnerable on the inside, but they do a good job with the guard play. They're back to being a relatively mid-tempo team, which you sort of expected there. And then with Southern Utah, this is a team that's looking to play a little bit more rapid, about 113th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Southern Utah really encourages teams to drive it inside, and that's not a good thing in this case, because for Utah Tech, they're outside the top 3 area with their 3-point shooting percentage at 30.2%, but they're a top 100 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Big reason why they bring in the Utah Valley transfer in Ethan Powder has been really able to elevate this. 17 points, a block, 7 rebounds per game, and then for this Utah Tech team, you've had Jashawn Holt come over from Alabama and Georgia, shoot 44% for 3, 9.5 points per game, but he's like the only guy in the roster other than Britton Barrett, who gives you only about 4.5 points per game, that shoots above 34% from 3-point range. Team has been able to do a much better job in terms of being able to control things down low, as this team is now in the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and this has been a Utah Tech team that's still been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got a Southern Utah team that's doing a terrible job in terms of taking care of the ball, right around about 13.5 turnovers per game, outside the top 260 in terms of ball security. They themselves outside the top 3 in terms of generating turnovers, so the turnover battle goes the way of Utah Tech. And for Southern Utah, they allow teams to shoot 37% for 3. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. But again, in terms of the percentage of shots that come from 3-point range, bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. And with the 2-point shots that they allow, they're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. Jaden Faroa comes over from Holy Cross, does a bit of everything, 12.5 points, 6 boards, 2 blocks per game, shoots about 39.5% from 3. And then Tanner Haydenhurst has been able to shoot about 49% from 3 with 9 points per contest, but the team still has been very sloppy with it. Your top scorer, Elijah Duvall, 3.3 turnovers per game, does give the team about 13 points per game, but also shoots only about 25% from 3-point range. And with this Southern Utah team having very much difficulty being able to shoot from the outside, I do think that that's going to be just enough for this Utah Tech team to get the job done. And I did set a total here of a 148 with the way that Southern Utah does like to play up tempo. So I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay with Utah Tech. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 871, 872. Utah is on the road against Washington. Washington is an 11 to an 11.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 159.5 to a 160.5. And with Utah, I set them as an underdog of 13 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Washington. I just feel like Hans Steinbeck coming back for Washington after he was missing for a few games, that just really elevates this team. He has been a double-double machine this year, 17.9 points, 12 boards, 2.3 assists per contest. He has been absolutely tremendous, and they've been dealing with injuries pretty much throughout the entirety of the season. Wesley Yates missed a game or two. He's been able to give the team about 15 points, 4 rebounds per game. You had Desmond Claude out for 4 games. He's starting to find his sea legs. He's been supplying the team with about 14 points per game, but 12 plus points in now each out of the last 4 contests, and he hasn't even really been able to find his 3-point shooting form yet either. He's only shooting about 30% for 3. Do have to figure that elevates as the season goes along. This is a Washington unit that has been pretty solid on the defensive end as well. Top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, being in the top 125 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and they're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of their own missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Now for Utah, you've had Keno Dawes do a really nice job on the glass, 9 boards and about 13 points per game, and then you get no scoring whatsoever as James Okonkwo, but he's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game as well. But this is a Utah team as well outside the top 130 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, because they just don't generate turnovers. Outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, Utah is playing fast, but not necessarily warp speed fast, about 101st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Washington playing relatively fast, 78th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And to the credit of Utah, they do shoot about 37% from 3, top 80 mark in all of college basketball. Terrence Brown has been that main guy, 21.5 points, 4 assists, comes over from Fairleigh Dickinson, and he's been fairly good. And then Don McHenry, 19 points per game. He's been able to shoot 42% from 3-point range, but it's become a very top-heavy team for this team. They've had Okonkwo deal with a little bit of injury, but he should be good to go here. But for this Utah team, with them not being able to generate a lot of turnovers, with Utah being outside the top 175 in terms of both opponents' 2-point shooting percentage and rebound percentage, I do think that Washington wins this game from within. I did set a total here of a 155. I do think that Washington is going to do a nice job in terms of buckling down on the interior and not allowing a lot of good shots from three for Utah. So like the under, and I'm going to lay with Washington, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-565, 306-566. NC Central is on the road against Penn State. Penn State is a 21.5 to a 22.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 149.5. Set a total of a 145.5. I do like the under. You have a Penn State team that has very much slowed down for past seasons. It does feel like they're starting to crank up that tempo a little bit more, but still, with Penn State, towards the total possessions per game, they do find themselves right around about 277th. Meanwhile, you've got an NC Central team that's clocking in about 259. So I just don't think that you get enough possessions here for the over, even though Penn State has done a masterful job taking care of the ball. A top 20 team. There's a few turnovers on a per possession basis, with the two freshmen being able to step up, and Mali Tunka along Caden Mingo. They've been able to combine for about 25.5 points per game, and Tunka shoots 43% from three. Mingo doesn't shoot it well from three, but 4.5 assists, 2.1 steals per contest, and then Freddie De Leon, one of the main holdovers from a season ago, 15 points per game. Main kryptonite with this Penn State team, you have no rebounding. The lone guy that gives you over 4 rebounds per game right now is Mingo for this Penn State team. They have been really giving it up on the inside, outside the top 285 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but you got an NC Central team that has really not been able to do a great job down low either. For this NC Central team, their main forte is generating turnovers. Last year, they were a top 30 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. This year, they're more in the top 75, but they themselves are hovering right around about 300th in terms of both their own 2-point shooting percentage and their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. For NC Central, you really have only one guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, and Corey Carvey, 15 points, 7 boards, a little bit over a block per contest, and then Gage Lattimore, 19 points, shoots 38.5% from three. Heart and soul of this team, Carvey and Lattimore, the lone two guys on the roster, registering at least 7 points per game. It's an NC Central team that, on top of their woes inside, they're outside the top 300 with their 3-point shooting percentage at 30.1%, was really not being able to find those ancillary guys. So you do have a nice, shall we say, facilitator in Deontay Johnson, only 5.5 points per game, but 5.5 assists, 2.9 steals per game. I do think that Penn State is going to be able to win this game rather comfortably. Set my line at a 23.5, so we'll delay the 22.5 here with Penn State and in on the under. Set my total 145.5, 306-567, 306-568. Illinois plays those to Southern. Southern is a underdog of 31.5 points, 163.5 to 164.5 is the total line. With Southern, I did set them as an underdog of 33.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 31.5. This is an Illinois team that's actually slowed down a little bit from where they have been in past years in terms of total possessions per game. This team is checking in more in that neighborhood of about 200th in the country, so this is not the rapid pace team that we've seen in the past. Well, Southern, they are playing at a rapid pace, 18th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Southern has been outside the top 300 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and having to go up against an Illinois team that hasn't even gotten the best out of Tomislav Ivisic yet, who's only been able to give the team about 5.5 rebounds per game. That's a scary thought. Right now for Southern, you only have one guy that gives you over 5.3 rebounds per game, and Malik Ajawalt. He comes over from UMass, about 12 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and then you've got a nice go-to scorer, Michael Jacobs, who's been able to give you 21 points, 4.5 assists. He's shooting a little bit over 43% from 3-point. Missed a few games, but was back for that Baylor game, so he should be good to go here. But, and that's it, outside those two guys, nobody else gives you more than 10.1 points per contest. So Cameron Broey, about 3 steals per game. Last year, Southern was one of the best teams in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis in all of college basketball. This year, they're outside the top 125, and with this team also being well outside the top 225 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, I think that Illinois is going to be able to take it to them. Now, Illinois, not a team that's going to generate turnovers whatsoever. This team is, as a matter of fact, bottom 5 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they do everything else well. They're a top 10 team with regards to rebound percentage, top 50 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, top 30 team with their free throw shooting percentage, with Keaton Wagler really stepping up as that main scorer, 15.5 points, shooting 43.5% from 3-point. Andrei Stojakovic shooting 25% from 3. That's going to go northward. 15.5 points per contest. Kylan Boswell's been able to give you 15 points per game. David Barosic, I know that has been gulled out by our good friend and Mr. Brad Underwood a little bit, but still has given you 15 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. I think that the overall versatility for Illinois gets the job done here. I did set my total at a 161.5. This Illinois defense has been much improved from where it has been in past years with Illinois. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis right now, they are checking in 83rd in all of college basketball, and with Southern having a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball, I do like this total to go under, to go along with Illinois, 1-33 with the Fighting Illini. 306-569, 306-570. UMass Lowell is on the road against Iowa. Iowa is a very sizable favorite here. You're going to be laying 31.5 to 32.5 points with them. 143.5 to 144.5 is the total. So that Iowa's a 33.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. You've got dueling tempos here as this UMass Lowell team, they are looking to play actually quite a bit of tempo, 123rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Iowa, 359th in terms of total possessions per game, but with Iowa, they're also a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, top 15 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're just executing really, really well, with Bennett Steers being the lone guy that gives you double figures, but 16.5 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, shoots over 42.5% from 3, and for your top 4 scorers that made at least 1 3 for this Iowa team, they all shoot at least 42.5% from 3-point range. Davion Banks, Alvaro Fogurius, they both give you between 9 to 9.5 points per game. They combine for 8.7 rebounds, 2 steals. They both shoot 45.5% from 3. Just a really well-rounded team in general. And for UMass Lowell, this team in past years has been really good in terms of being able to hit the glass, in terms of the mid-major ranks. Not so much the case this year. They're now outside the top 150 in terms of their overall rebound percentage. They've been a little bit better in terms of grabbing second and third chances, thanks to Austin Green, give you 15 points, 8 boards. So he's been a nice helper coming over from Texas State, but he's the only guy on the roster that's giving you over 5.5 rebounds per game, and UMass Lowell's having a very difficult time taking care of the ball. Outside the top 285 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're getting just absolutely blasted inside, being outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. JJ Massaquoi has been able to give you 10.5 points in the backcourt, but doesn't shoot it well from 3. Team as a whole shoots about 33% from 3, just below country average, with Daryl Yepto being able to shoot 40% from 3, about 10 points per contest. But I think that Iowa is going to be able to do a great job generating turnovers. This UMass Lowell team outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And though Iowa doesn't play fast, I think that they execute just enough on offense to be able to get you the over. So my total at a 145.5. So I do like the over, and with Iowa, we'll lay to 33.5 with them. 306-571, 306-572. Coppin St plays us at UMBC. UMBC is a sizable favorite of 11.5 points on this game, between 151.5 to a 152.5. Made my total a 145.5. I like the under. Coppin State outside the top 345 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They've sped themselves up from past years, about 162nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and UMBC is actually playing quite a bit more slowly than they have in the past. 253rd in terms of total possessions per game, and UMBC, it doesn't sound like much, but they're a little bit better on defense. 259th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Coppin State's just awful. Coppin State is 360th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Coppin St has no sort of a go-to scorer whatsoever. Right now, there's not a single guy on the roster that's averaging more than 8.8 points per game, with DeMontentry Hall give you about 8.8 points per contest, and he's been missing for the last 4 games, so he's not even suiting it up. You don't have a single healthy player on the roster that's averaging over 8 points per game. Khalil Horton being that guy, actually shoots 42% from 3 with 8 points per game, but I mean, with Hall also being out of the fold, you don't have a single guy on the roster right now that's giving you more than 4.6 rebounds per game, with Taj Thewalt being able to do so. He's been dealing with a lot of injury as well, so you've got a banged up team. You've got nobody that really knows what the heck they're doing out there. They're turning the ball over about 15.5 times per game. That's a big reason why I did have to say UMBC here as a 13.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, and it's not that this UMBC team is like a vintage offense of Jim Ferry or anything like that. As a matter of fact, you have only 2 guys give you double figures. Lyle King, who's been able to supply 15 points per game. He only shoots 26% from 3. And then DJ Armstrong already has 2 buzzer beaters on his credit. 40.5% three-point shooter, 11.5 points per game. And for UMBC, this is a team that's very rough down low. They're outside the top 275 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that have become an offensive rebound, but they're playing some smart basketball in that they are keeping teams off the free throw line. They've been a top 45 team in terms of fewest percentage of possessions that result in an offensive rebound for opponents. They become a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. This team has been rather suspect in terms of generating turnovers outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Ace Valentine, very nice point guard, 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, only about 1.5 turnovers turnovers per game. Josh Odowondo dealt with a little bit of an injury. He's been able to give this team a bit more down low with 5+ rebounds per game, and I think that wins out against a Coppin St team that just does not have a single guy that does a good job on the glass for you. Semi-total at 145.5. Don't think the Coppin St does their part with this total. In on the under, and I'm willing to lay it here with UMBC 306-573, 306-574. Long Island is on the road. They're facing off against Georgia, and UGA is a very sizable favorite here of 29.5 to 30.5 points. 173.5 to 174.5 is the total, and made my total a 167.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Now, Georgia playing at warp speed, top 5 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Long Island has really sped themselves up as well. They're now about 80th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but both of these teams do a nice job generating turnovers. Georgia is a top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. LIU is more around about 100th, and LIU has actually become a solid three-point shooting team, shooting 37.5% from three, top 75 mark in all of college basketball, and I'm willing to take the points with them. Malachi Davis and Jamal Fuller combining for about 31.5 points per game, and Fuller shoots 47.5% from three, so that is a little bit fuller with this three-point shooting. And then with Fuller, Greg Gecko-Gordon, and Jamu Goings, they all give between 4.8 and 5.5 rebounds per game. This is a team that's going to lose the battle down low, but really both of these teams are allowing a lot of second and third chances. LIU outside the top 3 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. Georgia's outside the top 160 as well. Problem is Georgia is a little bit of a better team in terms of being able to grab second and third chances. With Georgia, you've been able to get good production out of Blue Kane, about 16 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and then Samtu Cyril at 6'8". He's able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per game as well. It's a Georgia unit that their main kryptonite has been three-point shooting. Outside the top 270 with their three-point shooting percentage, Jeremiah Wilkerson, their top scorer with 18 points per game. He's out shooting 38% from three, but really the lone out of their top 8 scorers that shoots above 33.5% from the outside. Justin Bailey does shoot 38% from three as well, 6 points per contest, so he's starting to elevate a little bit for this team. And then even though he doesn't give you a lot of production on offense, Justin Abson, about 5 rebounds per game. This has been a Georgia team that's been a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they do a great job inside. Top 20 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. So I do think that this is going to be a bit of a sloppier game. I think that 3-point shooting for Georgia just cost them an over, though. So semi-total at a 167.5. I like the under, and I'm going to take the points with LIU. Set them as a 25.5 point dog. 306-575, 306-576. Cincinnati, and yes, we're on to Cincinnati. They play us at Lipscomb. Lipscomb is an underdog of 12.5 to 13.5 points. 148.5 is the total line with Cincinnati. I set them as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be one take the points with Lipscomb. This is a Cincinnati team that just has not impressed me one bit. Cincinnati is just playing too fast for their own good as well. I don't understand why they've sped themselves up so much. They're now 66th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security on offense. They're outside the top 220 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis on offense, and they go up against a Lipscomb team that has had a little bit of changing of the guard. Kevin Carroll comes on up from the D2 ranks to coach up this team, and for Lipscomb, they've been a very good team in terms of generating turnovers. Top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They themselves are outside the top 200 in terms of taking care of the ball. Lipscomb does nothing to get themselves to the free throw line outside the top 320 in terms of percentage of their possessions that do end in a free throw line. Lipscomb is a team that they play fast, but they're not necessarily playing like out of sorts fast, about 51st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Lipscomb, you've got some good versatility. Grant Hansman, he stands right around about 6'10". He's been your main scorer, 14.6 boards, shoots over 42% from 3-point. Charlie Williams is another guy that's in 6'10", that's able to pop it from three, but less than 30% there, but still 9.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. And then Mateo Esmeraldo, 7.2 assists, so 1.8 turnovers per game, 11 points per game. I do think that that's going to be able to keep them lively. And then you do have a Cincinnati team that I talk so badly about what they're doing on offense. This has still been one of the most supreme defenses in all of college basketball. This team, as a matter of fact, 6th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Getting back Giselle James after he was suspended / dismissed from the team, that's going to be all up out a little bit. He's been able to average 13 points per game in the 2 games that he's played for the team thus far. Bobby Miller's rock solid down low, 14 points, 10.5 boards, but the team only shoots about 31.5% from 3-point, despite the fact that Day Thomas has been shooting 47% from 3, 94% the free throw line, 13.5 points per contest for Cincinnati. Top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're going to be able to dominate the glass in this one, but still, for Cincinnati, even though they're a team that they're looking upon the ball inside, they're still outside the top 200 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they're taking about 29 threes per game. I don't understand why. I don't have the personnel to shoot it from 3, and I think that keeps Lipscomb very lively in this game. I think that causes for a little bit of a lower scoring game as well. Semi-total 143, like the under and the points here with Lipscomb. 306-577, 306-578. Michigan plays host to McNeese. McNeese is an underdog of 23.5 points, 159.5 is the total. And with McNeese, I set them as a 25.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Michigan. McNeese is actually a top 10 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And if you're able to poke a little bit of a hole in this Michigan team, it is the fact that they are outside the top turner with regards to their ball security. But this is a Michigan team that's currently number 1 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are going to absolutely dominate the boards in this one. You've had Ade Mara come in, and he has been very good at about 7'2", 7'3", supplying the team with 10.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Yaxel Lendeborg, 15.5 points, 7.5 boards. He's now shooting 40% from 3. Trey McKinney is shooting 40% from 3. Elliot Kadu, he's been doing a better job of protecting the ball as the season has went along. 10 points, 5.8 assists. It's only about 2.5 turnovers per game. He's now shooting 43.5% from 3-point range, and it's a Michigan team that is very much looking to move it themselves. 17th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You do have a McNeese team that they're looking to play a little bit more slow and controlled with McNeese. They do a great job with regards to their generating their turnovers, and that means that you get just a lot of dead possessions in their games. They're about 264th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but now they have to go up against a Michigan team that's allowing nothing easy inside. Michigan, number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and it's a McNeese team that they're country average with their 34.5% 3-point shooting. They've been a top 50 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, so they're very content to drive the ball inside. To the credit of McNeese, top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball, with Larry Johnson leading the way, no relation to the Kansas City Chiefs running back, 16.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and it's just a lot of by committee for this McNeese team down low. You don't have a single guy that gives you more than 4.5 rebounds per game, but you've got 5 different guys that give you at least 4 rebounds per game. So that's why it's a lot of fun. And then in terms of generating turnovers, 3 different guys, Gawari Duel, Tyshawn Archie, along Javon Garcia, I'll give you at least 1.8 steals per game, with Duel leading the way with 9 points, throws in there about 4.5 assists per game. Not a great 3-point shooter. Garcia and Archie, they combine to shoot about 40% from 3, 26 points per game between the two of them. But I just think that this Michigan team is so good that they just dominate them. And for this McNeese team, they're outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Michigan is going to be able to get the second and third chances, in my opinion, to get the job done. Semi-line at 25.5, 1-8 with Michigan. Do you think that the defense steps up for both of these teams, and you do get a lot of dead possession, set by total of 153.5, like the under? 306-579, 306-580. Rutgers is going to be playing us at Delaware St. Delaware St, 19.5 to 20.5 point underdogs. 133.5 to 132.5 is the total, and semi-total at a 139.5. I do like the over. Now, Delaware State has really slowed themselves down. Typically, this is a bit more of a brisk and up-tempo team, 288th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and no shocker, Rutgers back to playing slow and controlled, 284th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but this is a Delaware State team that is not impressive on defense. 363rd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and a little bit better on defense, but 240th there. You've got a Rutgers team that they themselves well outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're about country average on defense, 175th in the country. A little bit of that is byproduct of playing just some tough non-conference competition, but for Rutgers, I do think that the combination of Tariq Francis and Dylan Grant going to be very, very good in this one. They're combining for about 27.5 points per game. Grant is able to give you 6 rebounds per game, and at 6'7", he's been able to shoot 44% from 3. JaMychal Davis shoots 41.5% from the outside with about 8 points per game. Rutgers doing a solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, tops a 175 team, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now Rutgers is allowing teams to shoot 36% from 3. That's outside the top 275 in all of college basketball, but now they face off against a Delaware State team in which the backcourt play is leaving something to be desired. Only one player is giving you double figures. Ponce James, he's been a Ponsation, giving you about 13.5 points, 4 assists, 2.2 steals per game, but for Delaware State outside the top 240 in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage, and a bottom 10 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they allow a lot inside outside the top 3 in terms of both 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage of defense. Now for Delaware State, they've been a top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and to their credit, this has actually been a team that's not a lot of second and third chances. Top 125 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but they only have one guy in the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Miles Webb, he's been able to supply about 8 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but he's missed 3 or 4 games due to injury. Should be good to go in this one. He missed much of the beginning part of the season due to injury, but I do think that Rutgers is going to be able to be a little bit more, shall we say, efficient on the offensive side of things. They're going up against the Delaware St team that just has not been able to defend, and Darren Buchanan, who comes over from George Washington, he's been able to supply about 7 points per game. I think that he's going to elevate as the season goes along as well. Set my line at 23.5, so along with the over, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Rutgers as well. 306-581, 306-582. Vanderbilt plays us in New Haven. New Haven is an underdog of 41.5 points with a total of 143.5. Set Vanderbilt as a 44-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, Vanderbilt going to be without Frankie Collins. He tore his meniscus. That is one of the leaders in terms of steals in all of college basketball, but still against New Haven, this is not going to be a case where New Haven's going to be able to exploit that. New Haven is right now well outside the top 310 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and New Haven 363rd in terms of total possessions per game. Vanderbilt is looking to gun it. They're 22nd in the country with this regard, and New Haven about a country average team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis on a very soft schedule. Now you have to go up against a backcourt that includes Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles. These two guys combine for 32.5 points per game. Tanner shoots about 43% from three-point range. Both guys combined for about 9.2 assists and 4.5 steals per game. As well, Tyler Nickel, 15 points. He's been able to shoot 48% from three-point range. This team in Vanderbilt is going to be able to dominate down low. Devin McLaughlin, along with Jalen Washington, combining for a little bit over 12 rebounds per game. But for New Haven, the biggest issue that you've got with this team coming up from the D2 ranks, they just don't have a lot of size. You've got Andre Pasha, who's saying 6'9". He's been able to give you 10.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. And then you've got one other guy that's sees meaningful minutes that's really above 6'7". So that's an issue. You just don't have a lot of depth with this team. Jabari Fitzpatrick has been your main scorer, 13 points, and he generates 2 steals per game. Problem is he also shoots 18% from 3. New Haven as a collective, they shoot less than 30% from 3 outside the top 300 all of college basketball. With New Haven as well, this team is getting bludgeoned on the glass outside the top 250 with that regard. And even though New Haven is okay in terms of being able to generate turnovers, that's not going to work against its Vanderbilt offense. Set my total at a 142. Don't think that New Haven does a part with the total in on the under, and set Vanderbilt as a 44-point favorite. We'll lay that number 306-583, 306-584. Mississippi State is playing us at Alabama State. Alabama State finds themselves as a pretty sizable underdog of 19.5 points, 153.5 to 154.5 is the total. Set my line at a 19.5 myself. So we're going to be waiting upon a little bit of line movement here. If we can get down to a 19 or less, we'll lay with Mississippi State 20 or more. That's my buy point on Alabama State. But with Alabama State, after last year, they were a top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They've been outside the top 225 with that regard. Good news is they face off against the Mississippi State team that's outside the top 280 in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis on defense. And Alabama State, to their credit, top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense themselves. Now, where Alabama State is getting killed is down low. Outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 325 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, but the two main guards, Ajon Anderson, Micah Simpson, they've been able to combine for 32.5 points per game. Simpson shoots about 35.5% per 3. Anderson, he gives you 4 assists per game. Tyler Bird has been a really nice off-the-bench scorer with about 9.5 points, shoots 39.5% from 3-point range, and they've dealt with an injury to Trey Miller. He's been a very traveled man over at UT Rio Grande Valley, Southern Illinois, and a lot of different places. They're going to be without him most likely once again, and it's going to be interesting to see if we get him at all before SWAC play. But that said, this team has been able to elevate a little bit more down low with Cam Polisi coming on over from Kenosha, 6 points, 5 rebounds per game, and then Jurius Stanback, he's been able to give you 2 blocks, 5 boards, 7 points per game. And Mississippi State, typically a team that's been really good down low with guys like Tolu Smith and company over the years. They just don't have as much low post play this season, even with bringing in Quincy Ballard from Wichita State, about 7.7 boards and a little bit over a block and a half per contest with them. The team is really built around their 2 main guards, so Joshua Albert, one of the better scorers in all of college basketball, 4 assists, 21.5 points per game, shoots 35% from 3. And Jabari McGee, as a little bit more of an ancillary guy, shoots 44% from 3, 9 points per game. And then Jaden Epps, 17 points per game, but Epps has really been able to go into takeover mode recently, 19 plus points in each of the last 4 games for a Mississippi State team that has really been upping their tempo. They are now in the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game, and for Alabama State, they play at a brisk pace, about 129th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that both of these teams are going to be a little bit sloppy with the ball. Mississippi State still outside the top 130 in terms of their own ball security, and Mississippi State outside the top 150 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, and they're outside the top 175 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. So I did set a total year of a 149.5, like the under, and at 20 plus, going to be won't take the points with Alabama State. 306.585, 306.586. Lamar is on the road against Northwestern St. Northwestern St is a 3 to 3.5 point home underdog. 137.5 to 138.5 is the total. And with Northwestern State, set them as a 2.5 point underdog. So at 3 plus, I'm going to be won't take the points. Now Northwestern State is getting just completely plowed on the glass outside the top 340 in terms of their overall rebound percentage, but reason to believe that this is going to improve because now they've got Willie Williams back. He missed the first 6 games of the season. In the 5 games that he's played, he's had a combined 35 rebounds. He's only given the team about 5.5 points per game, but that helps out big time down low. You've got Justin Redmond and Micah Thomas in the backcourt combining for 26.5 points per game, and they combine to shoot about 41% from 3 points for a team that has a collective. They are shooting 36% from 3, top 100 mark in all of college basketball. For this Northwestern State team, they are allowing it from 3-point range as well. They're a bottom 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Lamar team that is relatively slow and controlled. With Lamar, in terms of total possessions per game, they're checking in about 239th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Northwestern State, they're actually even slower at 275th. And Lamar has been able to get good versatility out of 6'10" Andrew Holyfield, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards. Right now shooting about 34% from 3, and Rob Lee, he shoots 39% from 3. Lamar as a whole, they're outside the top 225 with their 3-point shooting percentage at about 32.5%. Lamar's main forte has been generating turnovers, top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and to the credit of Lamar, they become a top 125 team in terms of their overall rebound percentage, but this is also a Lamar team that allows teams to shoot 35.5% from 3, hovering right around about 300th in all of college basketball. Cody Penbaker, about 9 points, 4.5 boards, 2 steals per contest. He's been rock solid, shooting 40% from 3-point range. And then you've been able to have Braden East come in with about 8 boards and 11 points per game. But I do think that with Northwestern State getting Williams back in the fold, that allows them to be able to hold in there on the glass a little bit more and be able to cover a number that I think is just a little bit too low with regards to the total as well, because I do think that there's going to be a lot of open looks from 3. Semi-total at a 140.5. I like the over and the points here with Northwestern State. 306.587, 306.588. East Texas A&M plays this to Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, a 6.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 147.5, and with East Texas A&M, set them as a 7.5 point underdog. So 1 to lay up to 7 here with Stephen F. Austin for East Texas A&M. This has been a squad that has been very good in terms of generating turnovers. Top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and much better with their 3-point shooting percentage as well. But now they're about 278th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Stephen F. Austin, no longer the same team in terms of generating turnovers that they have been in the past. But still, with this Stephen F. Austin team, they're still doing a very good job defensively. They are 40th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, with Stephen F. Austin really embracing a lot more inside as they bring in Jared Colonel, who's been able to give the team darn near 4 blocks per contest, and they get to go up against a squad that has been about country average with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage in East Texas A&M, but East Texas A&M is going to lose a battle on glass outside the top 325 in terms of percentage of their own missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, with Ronnie Harrison shooting 34% for 3, 14.5 points per game. That helps out the backcourt, and we've had Vinny Singoa be able to give you about 9.5 points. He shoots 42.5% from 3. Damon Garcia shoots 41% from the outside, but now you go up against a Stephen F. Austin defense that has been able to do a very good job, not just with regards to their inside with Colonel, but they're also allowing teams to only shoot about 28% from 3, top 40 mark in all of college basketball. You've had Keon Thompson be able to lead the way with about 17.5 points, shoots 34.5% from 3-point range, and as a whole, this is a unit that is shooting 38% from 3-point range. That is a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. Latrice Patrick, 16 points, a little bit over a steal night per contest. He only shoots about 32% from 3, but Narat Chikakamik, hopefully I said that correct. He shoots about 48.5% from 3. I know that I did not say that correct, but you know what? Krishan Christmas, he makes it feel like Christmas. He and Colonel have been able to combine for about 14 rebounds per game, 7 points per contest. And for Stephen F. Austin, even though they're not generating the turnovers that they have in the past, top 30 team in terms of taking care of the ball as well. I think that Stephen F. Austin, with that nice defense that is a little bit new look from past seasons, they find a way to get the job done, and I think that they keep it under. So I told 145.5, like the under, and I'm going to lay up to 7 here with the Lumberjacks. 306.589, 306.590. UT Rio Grande Valley plays us to New Orleans. New Orleans is a 4.5 point underdog. 155.5 is the total, and set my line at 4, so I had 4.5 plus. Won't take the points with New Orleans. New Orleans does need to take care of the ball better outside the top 275 in terms of their overall ball security, but I do think that this team is going to be able to fare quite well down low. You bring in Churchill Abis. He was over at DePaul along with Wake Forest, and he's not necessarily too much of a scorer with about 5.5 points per game, but block and a half, 4.5 rebounds per game. MJ Thomas is able to give you 7.5 boards, about 11 points per game, and Javon Buckley, who comes over from Southeast Louisiana, he's been able to give this team some direction in the backcourt. 2 steals, 5 assists, 5.5 rebounds, 13.5 points per game, shoots 35% for 3 for a New Orleans team that as a whole, they shoot about 34.5% for 3. Colton Benson, one of the better sharpshooters, so you're going to find at the mid-major ranks, 38% three-point shooter on volume, shoots 90% at the free throw line for a New Orleans team that has been pretty okay at being able to guard the three-point line, top 225 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for Grand Valley, this is a very fascinating team that has always been typically a very up-tempo team, but with Grand Valley now, they've been dialing it back a little bit more with UT Rio Grande Valley in terms of total possessions per game. Right now, they're clocking at about 208th in all of college basketball, and this is a Grand Valley team that they should be able to win the turnover battle with a bunch in New Orleans that is not generating any turnovers whatsoever. They're outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And to the credit of Grand Valley, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home and at home only, they've been a top 50 team in all of college basketball. With Grand Valley, they're doing a good job in terms of taking care of the ball as well, because they've got Always Wright. That is his name. First name Always, last name Wright. He's come in and he's been able to do a nice job in terms of stabilizing this offense as he's been able to give out a few assists. He's been a nice ancillary guy with about those 3 assists per contest. Not necessarily too much of a score with 6.5 points per game, but you've got Marvin McGee shooting 48% for 3 with 12 points per contest. Corey Cotton has been able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3 with about 10.5 points per game. And among their top 5 scorers with at least one made 3, all but one of them are shooting at least 40% from the outside, and they're shooting as collective about 40.4% from 3 points, but leave something to be desired with that interior offense. They've been outside the top 245 with that regard, and with this Grand Valley team, they're allowing teams to shoot only about 31% from 3 points, top 125 mark in all of college basketball. They've been okay in terms of being able to hit the glass as well. They've been a top 200 team with that regard, but I do think that New Orleans is going to be able to hold in there, mainly because this is a Grand Valley team that they themselves are outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They've been dealing with an injury to Kyle Dixon, who's been able to shoot about 41.5% for 3 with 9 points per contest, and with this team not really being able to match up with MJ Thomas and company down low, and myself thinking that Grand Valley is in for a little bit of regression with that 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that New Orleans holds in there, and this is a New Orleans team that's looking to play up tempo. Top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game. Grand Valley more of a mid-tempo team, and with that shooting regression and the turnovers that New Orleans will have, I set my total to more of a 148, like the under and the points here, with New Orleans 3 at 6.591, 3 at 6.592. Mississippi Valley State is on the road against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, very sizable favorites here. 44.5 points, 152.5 is the total, and I set my line at 37.5. I'm going to be able to take the points with Mississippi Valley State. Mississippi Valley State back outside the top 325 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been dealing with a little bit of an injury to their main rebounder in Daniel Mayfield. He's been out the last 3 games after supplying the team with about 6.5 rebounds, 13.5 points per game, but their main scorer, Michael James, is a guy that I think is going to be able to keep them lively. Shoots 35% from 3, 20 points per game for a squad that's still having a very difficult time taking care of the ball. Dead last in the country in terms of turnovers per game, but for Mississippi Valley State, they've also really cranked up the tempo. They're back in the top 75 now in terms of total possessions per game. Oklahoma, they're playing faster than they typically do under Porter Mosier. They're right around about 150th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I did set a total as a result at a 159.5. I am going to be willing to take a shot here on the over for Oklahoma. This squad has been a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they do a nice job winning the turnover battle. For Oklahoma, they're a top 25 team in terms of taking care of the ball, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're doing a nice job inside. Top 100 team in terms of rebound percentage, top 55 team in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and then you've got those guys in the backcourt, Xavier Brown, who's not really shooting above from 3 at about 30% from 3, but 15 points, 3.3 assists, steal and a half per contest, and then Nigel Pack backs it in at a 48% clip from 3 with about 16.5 points per game. Muhammad Wagyu has been able to throw in there 7.5 rebounds per game. Tay Davis about 7 rebounds, and Davis 3 assists, 12.5 points per game. So you've got each of your top 3 scorers for this Oklahoma team give you at least 3 assists per game, but very vulnerable is Oklahoma from the outside. They do allow opponents to shoot over 36% from three outside the top 260. With that regard, being able to get a little bit more from the outside, Xavier Bennett, who was dealing with a little bit of an injury to begin the season, 6 points, steal and half per contest, mid-30s 3-point shooter, 3 assists per game. I think that elevates this team. Now, Mississippi Valley State is going to get absolutely dump trucked down low, and for Mississippi Valley State, outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, I think that you get an up and down game where Mississippi Valley State does just enough to hold in there. Semi-total at 159.5, like the over, and the points here with the Delta Devils, 3 of 6, 593, 3 of 6, 594. Oklahoma State, they're going to be playing us to Bethune-Cookman. Cookman is an underdog of 18.5 points. So this game is 163.5, and with Oklahoma State, I made them the 20.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Two teams are playing very up and down. Bethune-Cookman is right now, in terms of total possessions per game, right around about 145th, and for Oklahoma State, this team is right now clocking in number 7 in all of college basketball, and for Bethune-Cookman, just not playing very well on defense, outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, you've got a nice headline scorer in Jacoby Heady, who's supplying 16 points per game, about 5 boards, steal and half per contest, and this is still a Bethune-Cookman team that has been okay at being able to generate turnovers, but not quite what they have been in past seasons, and they're really getting bludgeoned on the inside. This Bethune-Cookman team outside the top 320 in terms of rebound percentage, outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and I think Oklahoma State is going to exploit that. With Oklahoma State, they're a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, and you've had Anthony Roy coming off of injury, missed the first 3 games of the season, providing a really good scoring pop, shooting 43% from 3, 16 points per contest. Victorious Miller, he shoots 49% from 3, and it's Bethune-Cookman team also outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. With Oklahoma State, as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach with regards to rebounding. Only one guy in Parsa Falah, who's been able to give you 13 points, 5.8 rebounds per game, gives you over 5 boards per contest, but if you include Robert Jennings, who's right now dealing with an injury, you got 6 different guys giving you at least 4 rebounds per game. If you don't include him, at least 5 guys, and then you've been able to have Isaiah Coleman do a nice job with his versatility, about 7.5 points, a steal, 4.5 boards, so I like what he's able to bring to the table. Oklahoma State has also been having a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but this squad has been able to do a nice job in terms of being able to win that rebound battle. They themselves a top 75 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. I think that's going to be just enough to be able to get you the over, so I did set my total at a 164.5, and I do think that Bethune-Cookman with Daniel Ruzon down low, being able to give you about 10 points, 4 boards per contest. They do get a few inside buckets themselves, so like the over, and with Oklahoma State, well, lay up to 20 with them. 3-6-5 95, 3-6-5 96. Texas A&M is playing us to Prairie View. Prairie View is a sizable underdog, 29.5 to 31.5 point underdogs. 171.5 to 172.5 is the total, and made my total at 172.5. So you're at a 172 or less. I do like the over. Prairie View, a top 30 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Texas A&M, they are also looking to gun at 13th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. A&M very good in terms of generating turnovers, and both of these teams are top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Both gamble for turnovers, as both are outside the top 240 in terms of their opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and A&M is outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well, but they should very much win the battle down low against a Prairie View team that's outside the top 320 in terms of rebound percentage. Rashawn Agee, 12.5 points, 8 rebounds per game. He should be able to win that battle for A&M, and then Mackenzie Mbakbo missed the first 5 games of the season due to injury. 10.5 points, 5 rebounds. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3, gives the team nice versatility, and for A&M, right now they're a top 40 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage at 38.5%, and for Prairie View, you just don't have that 3-point shooting pop. Now, what you do have for this Prairie View team is a guy that was a 20-point per game scorer a few seasons ago at Southern, in Terrion Joseph, and he's doing it once again. He's given the team 22 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point, and been able to get some relatively good production out of Corey Wells, who's been able to give you about 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game, so he's playing very well. Marcel Bryant, he's only been able to give you about 3.5 rebounds per game after he was that top rebounder from the season ago. The team is just going to get dump trucked on the glass, as right now they are allowing teams to be able to grab just a bunch of offensive rebounds outside the top 300 with that regard. And for this team, they're outside the top 250 with their own 2-point shooting percentage as well, so that's a little bit of an issue in a game where I think it's going to be very up and down. I just think that the more athletic team in Texas A&M is going to be able to dominate. Lance Williams, he's been able to give this team about 2.5 assists per game, but you don't even have that main facilitator for Prairie View, so they've also been outside the top 200 in terms of turning the ball over themselves. That should allow Texas A&M to have plenty of fast break layups and be able to get get the job done in convincing fashion. Set my line at a 32.5, so 108 to 32 with A&M, and I'm in on this total over at a 172 or less. 36.597, 36.598. Iowa State plays us Houston Christian. Houston Christian, an underdog of 36.5 points. 145.5 is the total, and set a total of 136. I'm in on the under. I recognize that this is an Iowa State team that is a top 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're also a top 5 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Iowa State looking to push a little bit of tempo. They're right now about 114th in terms of total possessions per game. Houston Christian super duper slow, 355th in terms of their overall possessions per game. And Houston Christian has been a pretty respectable defense. Right now, 279th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're doing an okay job in terms of being able to guard the outside. Inside, they're just getting absolutely killed. Iowa State, meanwhile, this team, they do such an amazing job in terms of being able to generate turnovers. Top 5 team with that regard. Even with Taymon Lipsby being out of the lineup for a few games, they've had Joshua Jefferson give you 15 plus points, 8 plus rebounds, 5 assists. He's doing it all. And then Kylan Green and Elijah Brooks on the flip side have been your main guys for Houston Christian, with Green 5.7 assists, 2.3 turnovers per game, 12 points per contest, shoots 37% from 3. Brooks has only been able to shoot 20% from 3, dealt with injury to begin the season, but 3 assists, steal and a half. He's been able to pull in there about 4.5 boards per contest. But with this Houston Christian team, they are outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Houston Christian about 200th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they're really not allowing a lot of offensive rebounds, but they are just not guarding the first shot very well. And then you've got DeMarco Bethea, who's been able to give you 9.5 points per game. He's been able to slide the team with about 4.5 rebounds per game as well. But for Iowa State, having Milan Mimosilovic shooting just a hair below 50% from 3-point range, being able to put in there about 18 points per game, that's been big actually for Mimosilovic, up to 55% from 3-point range. It should be below 50% when it's all said and done, but Keelan Torre has been able to give you 11 points. He throws in there 2 steals, shoots 36% for 3. Demarion Bateman, he's been able to shoot 41% from the outside, and just the way that this Iowa State team is able to generate turnovers, I do think that that's going to keep this a little bit lower scoring, especially with Houston Christian playing as slowly as they do. And for Iowa State, I think that they absolutely take it to this Houston Christian team. Set my line at 42. I'm going to be willing to lay with Iowa State, and I'm in on the under as well. 306.599, 306.600. Ole Miss is playing with Alcorn St. Alcorn St 27.5 to 28.5 point underdogs. So this game is 147.5. Pretty much seeing mostly 27.5, and I did set my line at 28. At the 27.5, it's my max lay in terms of Ole Miss, and I am willing to lay it with Alcorn St. This is just a team that doesn't have a lot going for them. Bottom 5 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Bottom 10 team in free throw shooting percentage. Bottom 15 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. They actually shoot 37% from 3-point range, but they're outside the top 330 in terms of their opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage as well. It's a new look team under a former Florida State assistant in Jake Morton, and they've only got one double-figure scorer. That'd be Shane Lancaster, who's been able to give you 12 points, and he shoots 58.5% from 3. We should see massive regression there. Nick Woodyard shoots 42% for 3 with about 7.5 points per contest, but there's not a single guy on this roster that gives you at least 4 rebounds per game, and typically Ole Miss just gets completely bludgeoned in the glass. Not in this game. You've got Malik Dia, who's been able to provide some nice versatility at 6'8" right now, supplying 14.5 points, 7 boards, only shoots about 28% from 3, and Ole Miss is a whole country average team shooting about 34.5% from 3, and they've given it up from 3. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 34.5% from the outside. I did set a total here of a 152. I do like the over, especially with Alcorn St being a team that's really looking to push a little bit of tempo, 75th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Ole Miss, not necessarily a team that's looking to push as much tempo with Chris Beard's team. Right now, they're clocking in about 280th in terms of total possessions per game, but should find very much plenty of open looks both inside and outside, with AJ Soar now shooting 44% from 3, 12.5 points per game. Ole Miss still a good team in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 125 team in terms of US turnovers on a per possession basis. Top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Not really grabbing a lot of second and third chances, but in this game, someone like an Elias Kardame, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, he should be able to dominate down low. And then you've got Peyton Pinkins, who's been able to give you only about 5.5 points per game, but he's been able to give you about 43% 3-point shooting. He's been able to do a solid job there, and I do think that with this team under Chris Beard, he's going to be able to figure out a way to have James Scott, who's been a little bit down this year with only about 4.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, to fire on all cylinders. And I do think that they exploited an Alcorn St team that's just playing no defense whatsoever. Set my total at a 152. I'm in on the over, and one will up to 27.5 here with Ole Miss 306.601, 306.602. TCU plays those to Jackson State. Jackson State, a big underdog of 32.5 to 33.5 points, 143.5 to 144.5 is the total. Set a total of a 135.5. I do like the under. Now, Jackson State is playing at a pretty brisk pace, not necessarily super fast, about 136 in terms of total possessions per game. TCU, just a really good defense. Top 20 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and TCU, mid-tempo team, they're right around about 201st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Jackson State, I realize that this is a rough defense, 357th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but we have seen this TCU team really have some struggles from three-point range when they've been at home, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to take the points with Jackson State. I set them as a 29.5 point underdog. Right now, TCU, they're about 230th with their three-point shooting percentage at 32.5%, and you've got Brock Harding giving you over 5 assists per game. He's doing a nice job flowing good, clean offense, and Jaden Pierre in the backcourt. He's been able to supply about 11 points per game. He shoots 40% from three-point range, but it's been a little bit of a miss there for this TCU team. They're much better on the defensive glass and the offensive glass, top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, outside the top 100 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. TCU does give up a little bit from three-point range, with teams shooting about 33% from distance against them. Now, Jackson State is not lighting teams up with their three-point shooting at about 30%. They've been outside the top 275 with that regard, but you do have a guy in Deshaun Ruffin, who used to be a starter over at Ole Miss, 17.5 points, 3.5 assists per game, and then Jamie Mitchell has been able to shoot 40% for three, 13.5 points per game. Biggest issue you got with Jackson State, this team is just getting plowed on the glass. Outside the top 350 in terms of rebound percentage, Dorian McMillan, 4.2 rebounds per game. He is one of two guys, along with Mitchell, that are giving you over 3.5 rebounds per game. It's been a big, giant issue for them, but now they are getting in a few reinforcements. They've dealt with injuries all season long. Devin Reed only give you about 2.5 rebounds per game. That's been a big, giant disappointment, but now you get Dejounte Thomas. He comes over from Southern. He at 6'8", gives the team a little bit of size. He's been averaging about 4 rebounds per game in a limited time. Mike Williams in the backcourt has been able to step up a little bit as a freshman as well. Think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog of a game that's going to be super ugly. So somebody total 135.5. I like the under, and with Jackson State, we'll take 30 plus with them. 306-603, 306-604. Texas A&M Corpus Christi plays us in Nichols. Nichols, an underdog of 5.5 points, 137 to 137.5 is the total line. With Corpus Christi, I set them as a 4.5 point favorite. So here at 5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Nichols. Nichols has still been having some, shall we say, suspect play on offense. They're still outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but it's getting better. You've got a quartet of guys with at least 11 points per game, with Sincere Malone give you 11 points, 2.5 assists per game, and he's got some versatility at about like 6'7", shooting 40% from three, and then Jalen Searles has been able to shoot 40.5% from three, 13 points, 4 rebounds per game. Jalik Dunkley has been able to supply about 6.5 rebounds, 2.5 per game, 13 points per game, and Nichols back in the top 75 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They do gamble a little bit for turnovers because they're outside the top 3 in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but this is not a Corpus Christi team that's necessarily going to be going bombs away from three-point range. With Corpus Christi, really for the last few years, this has been a team that's been very content to drive the ball inside. They're back in the top 50 in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point line. They shoot as collective about 33% from three, with Mason Gibson shooting 41.5% from three, 9.5 points, about a steal per game, and then Nicholas Shamboyo, who missed the first 4 or so games of the season, 11.5 points. He's now shooting 39% from three-point range, and he generates a steal and a half per contest as well. And this is a Corpus Christi team that they themselves back in the top 55 themselves in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This Corpus Christi team a little bit better with their interior defense as well. This has become a top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but they're also outside the top 260 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. I think that this is going to be a little bit of a grimier game. Neither of these teams are necessarily looking to push a ton of tempo. Neither of these teams are necessarily super duper slow either. With Corpus Christi right now, they're about 186th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Nichols group that is about 176, so interesting bit of a circumstance here. So my total at a 136.5, so here at 137 plus, I'm going to be in on the under, and we'll take 5 plus here with Nichols. 306-605, 306-606. Minnesota, the state with the smallest strengths in the union, plays us a Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson hopes to be fairly priced as 23.5 to 24.5 point underdogs. So this game is 137.5, and with Minnesota, I did set them as a favorite of 24.5 points. So we'll delay up to 24 with them. Minnesota has by far the best player out there on the floor in Cade Tyson. 2 years ago when he was over at Belmont, this guy was shooting 40+% from three. It's been a little bit wobbly from this year, but shooting 42% from three, 22.5 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists. He's done a good job leading this unit, and for Minnesota, this is not a team that's going to go out there and is necessarily going to be batten down the hatches in terms of their perimeter defense outside the top 250, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage outside the top 200, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they're going to do a nice job in terms of being able to own the glass. They've been a top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage with Jalen Crocker-Johnson, 13 points, about 7.5 rebounds per game. Langston Reynolds, he's been very versatile, 3.5 assists, 4.5 boards, 10 points per game. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from three, but Minnesota, they've been shooting over 38% from three-point range in their last 5 games after a really rough start to the season, and they go up against a Fairleigh Dickinson team that has turned over a little bit of a new leaf. Typically, this team is just completely built through their backcourt. Now they've been able to add in there quite a bit of size with Cyril Martinoff. He's saying 7 feet tall. He's done a nice job being able to supply the team with about 5 boards, 9 points per game. Eric Parnell, about 10.5 points. He shoots 35.5% from three. Fairleigh Dickinson as a whole outside the top 225 with regards to their own three-point shooting percentage. Grabbing some second and third chances, top 125 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. And for Fairleigh Dickinson, actually quite a bit more slow than they have been in the past. They're down to about 230 first in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Hasn't really helped out on defense. So it's currently they are 350th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not that Minnesota's sterling, but they're more around about 71st. And with Minnesota, they do have one of the best home court advantages in all of college basketball. If you look at points allowed on a per possession basis, specifically at home, top 15 team in the country. So I did set Minnesota here as a 24.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay. I did set a total of 144.5 as I do think that Minnesota going to exploit a really bad Fairleigh Dickinson defense. So in on that over as well. And we're wrap things up with 306-607, 306-608. Auburn is going to be playing us Queens St. Queens St 23.5 to 24.5 point dogs. 173.5 to 174.5 is the total, and made my total a 166.5. I do like the under. Now for this Queens St team, defense has been pretty deplorable, 353rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a team that has actually dialed it back a little bit more with regards to their tempo, about 105th in terms of total possessions per game. Auburn, very similar, they're about 119th, but with Queens NC, I did have to set them as a 24.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Auburn. You do have an Auburn team that's been pretty solid in terms of taking care of the ball, fewer than 11 turnovers per game, and Queens NC last year was one of the better shot blocking teams in all of college basketball. They had to lose a lot of their big men, so that was an issue. You do have Avante Parker, though, give you about a block, 11 points, 4 rebounds per game, and then Nasir Man, 15.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. Good versatility there. Queens NC as a whole, they shoot 36% from three, and are a top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they have very much been outside the top three in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. But I do think that this Auburn defense is going to be able to hold up here. Recognize that they've been outside the top 80 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Auburn at top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, with Keyshawn Hall doing it all, 20.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's shooting 40% from 3-point range. Kevin Overton, he's coming on strong as a nice supporting guard, shoots 34% for 3, 11.5 points per game, and then you've got both Elijah Freeman and Keyshawn Murphy being able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game apiece. With this Auburn team, they're a country average team in terms of generating turnovers, but they've been able to do a pretty rock solid job finding a way to the free throw line. They've been a top 35 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. You've got Taj Pettiford, who's been supplying about 15 points, 2.5 assists per game, still only shooting about 32% from 3-point range, but you've got Sebastian Williams-Adam, who comes in off the bench and is able to average over 4 free throw attempts per game, 7.5 points, right around about 2.5 assists per game. I do think that this game is going to be slowed down just a little bit more, but I do think that Auburn is going to exploit a Queens NC defense that has been quite suspect, to say the least. I do think that the 3-point shooting is going to be a little bit suspect in this game, so I'm going to be in on the under, semi total 166.5, and we'll lay up to 24 here with Auburn, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, part of the VSiN family podcast. Big thanks to Mid-Major Matt Josephs for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, giving you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.